The time is now 6:03 PM, and I call the San Fernando special meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Victoria Garcia.
Present.
Councilmember Mary Solorio.
Present.
Councilmember Joe Fajardo. Vice Mayor Mary Mendoza.
Present.
Mayor Celeste Rodriguez.
Here, we have a quorum, and all city council members are physically present. Madam City Clerk, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? At this time, I'm asking for approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Vic Garcia.
Yes.
Councilmember Solorio.
Yes.
Councilmember Fajardo. Vice Mayor Mendoza.
Yes.
Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The next item on the agenda is decorum and order.
I can read that since the city attorney is not here.
Thank you.
So, Madam Mayor, so decorum and order. The city council elected by the public must be free to discuss issues confronting the city in an orderly environment. Members of the public attending city council meetings shall observe the same rules of order and decorum applicable to the city council as printed in San Fernando Procedural Manual. Any person making impertinent, derogatory, or slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous while addressing the city council or while attending the city council meeting may be removed from the room if the presiding officer so directs the sergeant at arms, and such person may be barred from further audience before the city council. That is the decorum and order, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any public statements for this evening?
Yes, thank you. This is the time and place for public comments on items on the agenda or other city issues. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. If there is anyone in the council chamber wishing to speak, please fill out the blue form located on the table in the council chamber's entrance and submit it to the city clerk. When your name is announced to speak, please walk up to the podium to address the city council. You may voluntarily state your name and address and speak clearly and directly into the microphone. Callers wishing to provide a live public comment, please close your YouTube stream of the City Council meeting as there is an approximate 8-second delay and will interfere with the live meeting streaming to YouTube. Again, please close the YouTube stream when calling in, and when it is your turn to speak, you'll be identified by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Lastly, please understand that the City Council is unable to respond to questions in order to comply with the public meeting requirements and must refrain from engaging in any dialogue during the public comment period. City staff will have your contact information and will be able to follow up directly with you regarding your question. And our first public comment will be from Marcos Tapia.
Hello, council members. Recently, MTA on their light rail wants to come through the city of San Fernando. They've taken it from the railroad tracks to the San Fernando Road. Nobody was in the at the MTA meeting in Van Nuys, which was back in February, which was very sad. So we hope that all these council members and the mayor will oppose that. If the MTA wants to build on the railroad tracks, that's fine. But to come through the mall, we oppose that. The other thing is on development, that developers want to come in the city of San Fernando and build in the parking lots. They must, if they go up a certain amount of stories, say 3 stories high, they must go down 3 stories low, parking structure. There should be no street parking. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. City Manager, could you connect with him to let him know when Metro will be coming to San Fernando?
Yes,
to do
I was
their
actually
presentation?
going, yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to announce, actually, Metro will be here on May 20th, so next Monday, giving a presentation at City Council, updating them on the light rail. And through the mall is not one of the options. I just wanted to, it's only along the right of way. But I'll get back to you and we can get more information.
Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. Before we get to administrative reports, we have a special proclamation we would like to present this evening. Mr. Carlos Hernandez, can you come up to the podium, please? Carlos, we are all incredibly sad and excited for you for your transition at the end of this week to your new opportunity. And we're just super excited for your family. And so we have this proclamation for you to hang up in your new place. The San Fernando City Council is honored to recognize you for your commitment, leadership, and exceptional service to the city of San Fernando and its residents. You have enriched our community and inspired us all. We extend our sincere gratitude for your invaluable contributions to the betterment of San Fernando. Our city is truly better because you came to serve it. Thank you. And then if any council wants to chime in, feel free, and then maybe we'll do a picture with you, Carlos.
I'll jump in. I'll go ahead. I'm gonna jump in. Oh, do you want to go first, Carlos?
Go first.
All right, I'll go. Thank you for this surprising proclamation. I really appreciate having worn this hat and worked for the city that I grew up in for the last 2 years and some change. And I just want to give a special thanks to our late council member, Cindy Montañez. She made me a transportation commissioner and really is the reason I applied for this job. She put it in front of me and said, no, you're doing this transportation thing, but come work for the city and apply and check this out. Maybe you might like it. And I did. And I also want to thank staff and Nick for all your guidance and tutelage. I think I learned a lot, and I hope that I left an impact here.
Definitely.
Carlos, we're going to miss you. It has been such a pleasure having you here at all our meetings and making your presentations. You have certainly made an impact in those that live and work here in the city of San Fernando. Thank you for your service, everything you did, all your bright ideas. You were great, and we will miss you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a picture, everybody. All right. Up next is our one item today under administrative reports, which is kicking off our budget study sessions. Ms. Melton, shall I pass it to you? And then if we could make sure, since this is the first opportunity our new council member is getting to do this and just barely the second, I think for Solorio, just making sure we're clear about what you expect from us today.
Absolutely.
And then when we will have our final approval and things like that. Thank you.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Tonight, it's my honor to present to you our budget overview of the fiscal year 24-25 budget. The budget definitely represents the city's priorities with price tags. We've made it a very special effort to engage the community as much as possible in the process. We've done a lot of circulation with commission meetings so that they were also aware of this process. And we also hosted a virtual town hall on last Wednesday as well. And the goal is, again, to just invite as much input in the conversation as possible throughout the process. This is a dynamic process also in terms of the document that's in front of you. While it is in ink, it is not in ink. And the goal is for us to continue to have conversations up and through the budget adoption, which right now is tentatively slated for July 1st. The proposed budget document has been posted to the city's website and can be accessed from the main site by going to Departments, Finance, followed by Financial Documents. And from there, the public can also access the 24-25 proposed budget document. And we want to continue to invite the public to do so. However, again, tonight we will be beginning by providing an overview of the budget before we deep dive into each of the department sections, where they will be going over in detail their baseline budget, their core services, how those core services are funded, in addition to the enhancements that are requested through this year's process. Before you know where you're going, though, you've got to know where you've been. And since 2005, the city's financial position has changed pretty significantly. I want to begin by displaying the city's financial history in the last few years, which is best explained by the general fund balance history, which is depicted here. The general fund, which pays for police, fire, recreation, and public works services, experienced a dramatic decrease in the amount of funding available to provide those services, as the city's reserves fell from 7.1 million in June of 2006 to a deficit of 5.7 million in June 2014. That was only 10 years ago. The dramatic reduction was the result of a perfect storm, as the city's expenditures on operating services began to increase just as the onset of the Great Recession in 2008 and 9 decreased our tax revenues. And like most cities, the Great Recession negatively impacted the city's finances through our sales taxes, business taxes, as well as property taxes. Additionally, due to the state of California's own financial troubles, they eliminated Local Redevelopment Agency, or RDA, funding in 2012. RDAs were used to make infrastructure improvements as well as fund economic development programs. The elimination of the city's RDA cost San Fernando more than $5 million per year. This caused our revenues to quickly decline, and the leadership of the time had to make drastic decisions to adjust spending. In addition, the staff remaining had to continue to provide services to the community, but was now doing more with less, and the sole focus became financial stability and solvency. The city declared a fiscal emergency and held a special election in June of 2013 for the San Fernando electorate to vote on a temporary 1/2 cent transaction and use tax measure, which was approved by 60% of the voters. The increased transaction tax went into effect in October of 2013 with an initial sunset of 2020. However, in November of 2018, Measure A was extended indefinitely by voters. In addition, in November of 2020, Measure SF was passed, which increased the city's transaction tax from 0.5% to 0.75%. This slide again demonstrates how the general fund weathered the storm and how, without the revenues generated by the local transaction tax measures, the city would have struggled to maintain financial solvency, in addition to, again, depicting the history of the city's general fund balance and the changes that have occurred over the last 10 years financially. So that's where we were. The result of the subsequent local transaction tax adoptions have positioned the city to transition from survival mode to full recovery. It's a good opportunity to pause and reflect on even the accomplishments of the past year. I want to highlight that many of these accomplishments are highlighted in the city's 2023 annual report, which is also posted on the city's webpage. And if you go to the city's main on the city's main site and scroll down just a little bit, there is a beautiful video. But if pictures were to capture and say 1,000 words, These photos capture the millions that have been achieved through the city's investments in community, public safety, stewardship, and beautification initiatives in San Fernando. The city of San Fernando has transitioned from survival mode only 10 years ago to recovery and is now looking ahead to thriving because of its resilient roots and vibrant vision. The local transaction tax has greatly assisted in many of these efforts that you just saw in the photos that were depicted. And the city has generated 31.5 million since 2013, with a projection of 5.1 million for the upcoming fiscal year. As we forge ahead into this new positioning from survival to recovery, and ideally next to thriving, the budget process is to ensure resources are in the right place to get there. I will now hand it over to our city manager to discuss the 2024-25 budget development process.
Thank you, Erica. As Erica had mentioned earlier in her presentation, the budget really is putting prices to priorities. And this process started, around probably about 6 months ago, late November, early December, when we started to look at revenue forecasting and also just putting the baseline costs together for personnel costs for the upcoming year. But it really kicked off in early February when we had our strategic goals and priority setting session with council. And one of the more useful outputs from that meeting were the 5 or 6 items that council that heard the most complaints from the community. So that really helped us as staff formulate in our minds, some starting to put resources toward how we address some of those areas that have the highest number of complaints. So that was earlier in the year. Then also we get community feedback from Enhanced Outreach. We held a number of town halls this year, one in September, one in March, where we talked about the city's finances. We had the priority setting workshop in February. We had our mid-year budget report in March to receive feedback from City Council and update the council on our priorities. We have about 250 survey responses, which we will share with council this week prior to our next. That's one of Carlos's his final work plan. So he's going to get that out. We're going to get that out by the middle of this week, and we can use that as information too as we go through this process. And then we also use the city manager's monthly newsletter and social media posts and emails, and then just comments we get on all of those items on where we hear the resources should be allocated from the community. We did. Erica and I spent quite a bit of time on some economic forecasts, reading local UCLA and LA Economic Development Corp. All have kind of local economic forecasts. The consensus is sort of that we're probably slowing down a bit from a national and state GDP standpoint. We all know the state budget woes right now. I think locally, we're actually in a relatively unique position that we have a major retailer like Target that just opened up, and a number of big job center like Monster, which will be opening up in the fall. So we do have some benefits there that we have to make sure that we're being conservative in how we plan financially, but we also have some things in our favor that any national or state slowdown, as long as it's not a full recession, shouldn't hit us as hard as it does at those higher levels. So with that in mind, we were looking forward where we were conservatively projecting an increase in revenue, but nothing, not 10% increases. I think more in the 3 to 5% increase level for our revenues. The budget theme we discussed early on, and this really was born out of that study session that we had with City Council in February, is really returning to essentials and prioritizing core values and enhancing quality. A lot of what came up were really related to streets and parking, and things that are core essential services that a city provides. So we realized we need to do a better job at doing those core services. So that's what we're we were looking at the budget through that lens of what are the core services that we need to do a better job as a city in providing to the residents. And then finally the enhancements, which you'll see tonight through the department presentations. A lot of the enhancements really focused on staff development, filling the last remaining deficiencies in succession planning and career ladders in San Fernando. So again, we can offer people opportunities to develop and grow with the city. Um, Really focusing on leveraging technology to be more efficient. So not necessarily adding more labor if we don't have to, if there's a technology solution that makes us more efficient. And also, again, really focused on addressing some of those complaints that we hear from residents as areas for improvement. So I just wanted to note here, at this time last year, the city had a number of vacancies in key leadership positions, including the Director of Public Works, Director of Community Development, the Water Operations Manager, and at the time, impending retirements of the Director of Recreation and Community Services and Personnel Manager. There are also vacancies in critical field positions, such as community preservation officers, public works maintenance workers, and police officers. And so that was at the time, the theme last year was sort of let the dust settle so that we could really get caught up on all of those, on hiring all of those. Overall, the city hired more than 16 full-time employees in fiscal year 23-24, which actually represents just between 13 and 15% of our total authorized positions. So that was just in 1 year. And then you can see this graph that's on the screen now, that almost 35 new public safety, public works, and community service positions have been authorized since 2020. We'd also had an extremely tight job market over the last 5 years. Many of the most experienced public servants have left the workforce, taking with them many years of historical knowledge and technical know-how. So we as an organization need to focus on providing the training and support necessary for our newer employees to succeed. And as management, we also need to set clear expectations and offer coaching, mentoring, and guidance to ensure that as an organization, we are all on the same page. You'll see this, you may see this around City Hall over the next few months. So these are the core values that we had discussed and are pushing out to all of our employees to really focus on in the upcoming years. And these values are not groundbreaking. They're very much, again, returning to essentials and what we really do. Excellent customer service, pride and quality of work, embracing diversity of services, and prioritizing stewardship of the city. So these form the foundation to set staff on the right path to meet City Council's expectations and address residents' needs. We may have all heard about the San Fernando Way, which in the past has meant sort of doing more with less and really kind of being reactive and putting out fires. We're at a point in development of the organization that we're taking that it's time for us to take that step and become the new San Fernando Way. And you'll hear a lot about that throughout the presentations tonight, about taking that next step. And the new San Fernando Way means that we do things the right way. We take pride in our work and we provide the best customer experience for our community. It's through the lens of transitioning from a reactive organization to a proactive organization that the work plans and budget requests in this proposed budget are put forward. So you may start to see this blooming core values flower throughout City Hall as a reminder to staff as why we do this work, who we do it for, and how it should be done. So this is just a recap or a refresher of about 6 of some of the key community complaints that we had heard back in February related to parking, street and sidewalk repair, homelessness, speeding, trash, and graffiti. And among some of the proposals put forward in the proposed budget, you'll see a number of them that will help us address and move some efforts forward to really address a few of these areas. So with that, I would like to turn it back over to Erica to finish our budget overview presentation.
All right. In terms of the overall 24-25 budget, what we have presented to you is a proposed budget of approximately $52.5 million, of which $26.7 million is governmental funds or predominantly general funds, $9.9 million in special funds, and then 16.5 of proprietary funds, which incorporate internal service as well as enterprise funds. And we'll go through those in greater detail. Again, the general fund represents where most of the public service funding is incorporated. The slide that you see shows a slight increase of 2.6% from the prior year. That's predominantly due to labor costs. Once we compare apples to apples, removing about $500,000 in prior year one-time enhancements. For internal service funds, we have a reduction of approximately 27% from the prior year, going from 6.6 million to about 4.8 million. That's due to a reduction that we're anticipating in our insurance premium costs. We are part of an insurance pool, and and part of the rate in the prior year was just inflated due to an issue that was believed that would impact our finances. However, it never came to fruition. We passed the due date, and in turn, our premium will be decreased, and we're anticipating a decrease this year. For enterprise funds, the amount is decreasing by about 15% from 11.7 million to from 13.9 million, to 11.7 million. That's due to a lot of carryover. We're expecting to finish a lot of those large-scale projects, which traditionally just carry over again another year, and a lot of those happen to deal with some of those unfinished water and sewer projects that were budgeted in the prior year, and again, those are anticipated to be carried forward. And the same for our special revenue funds. Those are predominantly grant and special funds used to complete a lot of the capital improvement program items, and again, those are just multi-year items that will be going more in depth with the Public Works budget study session to discuss all of our capital improvement projects, where they are in terms of the status, as well as their funding sources. And a lot of those are, again, unspent that will be likely carried forward into the next fiscal year for completion. Well, that is the complete budget. A lot of the focus in terms of, especially tonight, and the city's focus, because that's where we get a lot of our local revenue sources from, is the general fund budget. And usually when we talk about that, about 95% is spoken for through fixed costs, including 62% for personnel costs. And while we discussed again earlier how in the past we were doing more with less, the city has since not only been able to restore positions, but place in much needed areas. And we saw kind of the trend in terms of even the increase in FTEs over the last few years, in order to make sure that city service delivery was high and in place. And in the 23-24 budget, there were 146 FTE positions. Tonight we'll discuss some of the, we'll talk about some positions that are being recommended in the new year. Contractual services represent 22%, and the city contracts a variety of services that are negotiated to supplement the city. Those services would be otherwise contained in our personnel ongoing costs, but we've instead been able to control costs by placing them in this category. Examples of contractual services include the city's fire services, which we contract with LAFD, legal services, our city attorney is a contracted service, and animal control, which is even a service that was approved at the last council meeting. And finally, 12% is internal service charges. We consider that kind of overhead. Those include services such as our self-insurance fund, in which, again, we pay for our workers' comp, liability insurance, facilities management, for facility upkeep. That's where we pay equipment replacement out of also. So those are our internal service charge funds. And again, that speaks to about 95% of the budget. What's then remaining is about 5% that we're discussing in terms of enhancements, discretionary funds, which is what I want to highlight next. Overall, we are projecting for the general fund revenues of $28.1 million. That is a composition of our property taxes, charges for services, business licenses, as well as sales and transaction use taxes, which are our primary categories of revenues for the city. We generally work with a number of consultants. We review economic forecasts in order to develop what those are. And again, I believe that we were fairly conservative this year, again, kind of taking into account the local, the national, as well as the state landscape. We are projecting expenditures of 26.7 million, and that again is before enhancements. And those incorporate the baseline operating budgets for each of the departments to operate, again, based off of those personnel, internal service charges, as well as contractual services, which are fixed. The next area is the area of that we will be highlighting, and of course, that's the area in which, in terms of the next few study sessions that we recognize and really want City Council input on. Certainly the recommended enhancements, and then thereafter the surplus. In terms of recommended enhancements, those are the areas in which departments, based upon the studies and the strategic priority session that was held, in which we developed solutions based off of that. And in turn, departments have recommended specific enhancements that are being put forth by the city manager. In total, those represent $925,000, with $500,000 being ongoing and $424,000 being one time. That brings the proposed budget to a total of $27.6 million. I want to highlight some of those recommended enhancements. Those include about $58,000 for area with a focus on community, of which $2,000 is one time and $56,000 is ongoing. Beautification efforts, which total about $120,000. Public safety initiatives, about $106,000. Economic development, of which I'll highlight one of which is a position request, which accounts for what you're seeing predominantly in that ongoing category. And then finally, stewardship and staff development, in which you'll see a lot of investment in staff in terms of professional development, which again refers back to a lot of the core values and the budget theme overall. Again, the total enhancements that are being proposed are one time, $424,000, followed by $500,000, and ongoing for a total of $925,000. This will leave a projected budget surplus of $401,529, which through the discussions, City Council can elect to move to our general fund reserve or fund additional City Council enhancements to be used for community investment purposes. In terms of what we will accomplish tonight, we have several departments which will be going more in depth in terms of their department budgets. Each department's presentation will emphasize the city's theme of returning to essentials, prioritizing core values, and enhancing quality. The emphasis will be placed on really discussing each of the core services in which the departments provide service. From there, they will highlight the baseline budget in order to operate, which does not incorporate enhancements, but just, again, their personnel costs, contractual services, operating costs, and in addition to, again, that overarching 95%. From there, they will discuss their work plan, just to, again, make sure that everything that City Council wants incorporated in terms of their work plan for the upcoming year is incorporated. They will then discuss each of the enhancements that have been recommended for their areas for council feedback. and finally, the organization chart and structure in order to perform those services, in addition to the performance metrics and how they will be measuring achieving those services in the upcoming year. The departments that will be presenting tonight are the City Manager's Office, City Clerk's Office, Administrative Services, which I will highlight is a title change from Finance, as we are recommending the inclusion of Human Resources under Administrative Services, which will then have Finance, HR, and IT, Community Development, followed by Recreation and Community Services. And again, each of the departments will go into depth in terms of their budget areas. On May 20th, Police Department, May 28th, Public Works, which will go over their operations as well as the capital improvement plan and projects. And an additional date has been reserved for June 3rd if needed, with the goal of adopting the budget on July 1st. The process through that, up until that time, again, is dynamic so that we can continue to receive back both from council as well as provide as many public input opportunities as possible. With that, I welcome your questions.
If I may, Madam Mayor, before council questions, I just did want to highlight a few things. First, starting on page 23 of your budget, of the actual budget, pages 23 through 27 is the complete list of enhancement requests from the departments. So there were about $3 million worth of requests and only about $900,000 of recommendations. And I'll say that the recommendations from in the city manager's proposed budget, again, if there are any of these that you don't agree with or you think should have been included, please, that's what the purpose of each one of these studies, of each one of these presentations from the department, from each department is for council to give their feedback on whether or not they agree with the enhancements and whether or not there may be additional ones that they would like to see. I really focused primarily on operations and operating things that may be a little bit, may not be in the city council's sphere of focus, because you're not necessarily here on a day-to-day basis, and you're, as you should be, very much focused on bigger policy issues. But I charge each one of the department heads with managing their budget, and so they come to me each year with areas that they see that they don't have enough budget to do what we're asking them to do. A lot of these areas you'll see are staff development. Some things like there's some technology enhancements that are needed to do their job better. There are some things like a finance system replacement, which aren't necessarily on a policy level, but they're very much operating necessities. So those are the things that I had focused on putting into as recommendations for enhancements, and wanted to leave plenty of funds for city council to guide on policy. And again, if there are any of these enhancements that council does not think are, as important as other items, we can certainly move those, those can be reallocated. So everything's up for discussion. I just wanted to put forward why the things that I put in there are very much operating related and are things that the departments had really identified as areas that they need help with from a resource standpoint in order to be able to do everything that you're asking us to do and that I'm asking them to do. So I just wanted to highlight that before turning it over to council for any initial questions, and then once if there aren't any questions, then we'll go into our department budget presentations, and city manager will go first, and then we'll stop after each. We'll provide a comment period after each department presentation, so council can give any feedback. Again, what we're looking for is A, do you think the enhancements we put forward are things that you could support, and B, are there any other items either through work plan or through resource allocation that council would like to see in a particular department. Those are things that we would love to hear tonight. And even if there's something that may not be for a department tonight, but it's down the road, if you bring it up and give us a heads up, then we can try to address those. If there's a public works issue or something, we can try to address those when we get to that public works presentation. So sorry, that was a little long of an overview, but I wanted to make sure council at least heard me, understands why we put some of the enhancements in or requested some of the enhancements and didn't and left others out.
Thank you for the overview, all of you. And thank you for providing the full list of enhancements requested. It's always really helpful for us to have insight into what the directors had suggested from the beginning of the process. I want to offer an opportunity for each council member, if you do have a question before we dive into our first department overview, which is an individual opportunity where they will explain the exact enhancements that they have requested to fund. And it's a good time to ask them about those. Are there any questions before we move on to departments?
I have a number of general questions, but I mean, I don't feel like it's necessary to have right now. I feel like it can be at any point, to be honest with you.
Okay, do you think it'd be helpful for council to consider as we hear the overviews? Or do you
I
want
don't
to
know,
hold till later?
That's subjective. I
But
don't.
also, you'll have a chance for closing comments at the end, before, as usual, at the end of council, okay?
That's true. And just to notify anyone, I am a little short-staffed today, so I might have to leave if I can't. I'm trying to find someone to help me with the client, but if not, I have to leave by 8:55, so I can talk with them from 9 to 10. So I don't know how long we'll be going, but I might have a 2-hour limit.
Okay, and I do want to add, thank you for letting us know that if there are any questions or suggestions or ideas after the presentations this evening from the three departments we'll be going over, we will have an opportunity at the top of the next budget session to hopefully have any questions answered that come up tonight, or let them know that you have more questions. This is a series of meetings to make sure everyone is comfortable with the budget in front of us. Mhm. How much you did to get community feedback and the enhanced outreach that was done. I'm a Bruin, so we love John Wooden, and he was like big on the basics. He was like the winningest coach in college basketball. And I just want to share this. I believe in the basics, attention to and perfection of tiny details that might be commonly overlooked. They may seem trivial, perhaps even laughable to those who don't understand, but they aren't. They are fundamental to your progress in basketball, business, and life. And I think your community feedback matches perfectly what I've heard from the community, whether it's parking, street and sidewalk repair, speeding, homelessness. So I'm really looking forward to working with the council on those issues. Thank you. We've worked really hard to get to this place. Vice Mayor Mendoza?
I'd just like to add that, I really appreciated your presentation, Erica. It's very clear and concise that anyone who's listening and looking at the PowerPoint can, understand what we're doing here in the dais and in City Hall. Thank you.
And just to add to the Vice Mayor's comments, I do know the commissions really appreciated you going there to present to them as well. So thank you for taking this show on the road and really meeting people where they were so that everyone was informed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While the city clerk pulls up the city manager's office presentation, I would just note, just to sort of piggyback on what the mayor was saying earlier about opportunities, even if between now and Monday you think of something you wanted to say, you can email it to us and then we'll bring it up. So this is not your only bite at the apple. So we encourage feedback, and it doesn't, if there are things that you want us to include in a future presentation over the next few weeks, please, let me know so that we can try to address that. Because I'm sure if you have the question, other council members have it too. So, all right, so let's get started. So the 24-25 city manager's office proposed budget. I don't know who I'm looking at for the slide. Erica, okay. So you'll see, in the past we had kind of gone into. We've read sort of the mission. We're trying to really sort of focus on core services this year. So you'll see all of our departments are instead of having a mission, which is a little more abstract, we're trying to really focus on what the core service for each department is. As administration, we're a little more abstract. We're not as community facing as far as a counter goes, but one of our core services, administration and leadership. So these services include implementing city council policies, providing leadership and coaching to employees, and fostering community relationships, whether that's with businesses or nonprofits or residents. Another core service is economic development. And through economic development, we are here to execute City Council's vision to create a vibrant and sustainable city. And then lastly, we do contract services oversight on some of the primary contract services, including the city attorney's office and the fire and emergency services contract. So you see, this is our baseline. There's a lot of numbers here on this baseline operating funding. I'll just very quickly, if you want to focus on the last two columns, 2024 adjusted to 2025 proposed. I just will highlight some of the changes between 24 and 25. For City Council in 2024, you see there's a bit of a reduction. That's because we'd like to cut all your salaries by 50%. I'm just kidding. It's because the pilot for the language access plan was in 2024. We got updated direction to have only the council meetings and then a few town hall meetings. So that reduced cost is reflected in the 2025 proposed budget. Administration and economic development, for all administration, economic development, city attorney and fire services contract, those increases in each one of those divisions really just reflects CPI contract increases and COLA increases per MOUs. There are no additional services that are being included in there this year. And then for personnel and labor attorney, you'll see those are at 0. We don't plan on eliminating our HR division. That would be suicide, but we are going to be, we are recommending that we're moving that over to a new administrative services department, as I think it works really well to have one centralized internal service department. Proposed work plan. So under our administration and leadership core services, our work plan for the upcoming year includes, again, supporting city council ad hoc committees. There's a lot of good policy work. That's part of our purpose to support good city council policy. And we also want to start the process of initiating the visioning process for the next version of the strategic goals, which I put on here as 2026 through 2030. Through the visioning process, that may be a longer or shorter time period, but this current one was 5 years. I think toward the end of this fiscal year, we'll want to start that process to update those strategic goals. We want to complete the website redesign. We are going through those efforts right now with the vendor that council approved to develop our new website, and as part of that, also fully implement the My San Fernando app. We have three MOUs that we are working to negotiate and implement, hopefully multi-year MOUs, which again really just helps the city from a financial standpoint to plan multiple years and really know what have a good understanding of what our labor costs are going to look like for 4 or 5 years going forward. And then finally, under administration and leadership, really focusing on evolving the organization. And you'll see throughout, we are emphasizing professional development and service expectations. And it's going to take us some time to get there, but we're going to continue to keep hammering home that message with all employees about where we're going as an organization, and we really want to be we already are, but even more so be the pride of the San Fernando Valley as far as service quality. I will pass it over to Kanika Kith, Deputy City Manager, to go over our economic development work plan.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, member of the council. As Nick mentioned, City Manager Office include Economic Development Division, and that's to help achieve the council vision for creating a vibrant and sustainable city. And this year work plan will be focused on 3 main items. The first one is the completion of the Downtown Master Plan. We kicked off the Downtown Master Plan late last year. The goal of the Downtown Master Plan is to create a community vision and an action plan for how to best achieve that vision. The master plan will help guide the future action, such as changes to land use and development regulation, capital improvement projects, and other economic development programs to help revise downtown San Fernando. And we hope to complete that effort by the end of this year or latest early next year. The second effort will be strengthening our business and human resource center. The Business NQ Resource Area was approved by City Council last year as part of your budget, and we had a very successful grand opening late last year in December. This year, we'll be focusing on establishing stronger, more partnership with different organizations to provide resources and support to our business and residential community. And last, that we would like to discuss with the council is State of the City address. This topic came up during the City Council strategic study session in February, and the council wanted additional information as part of the budget discussion. Just recently, I believe late last month or early this month, the Attorney General released an opinion that State of a City moving forward needs to be held as a special City Council meeting because there will be a quorum and they will be discussing city's topic and policies. Typically, State of the City is organized by the chamber and operate by the chamber, and usually to attend the State of the City, there's a fee, there's a ticket that you have to purchase and attend. So then the question of accessibility to a special City Council meeting. So that question is being discussed by different organizations, and before staff can recommend moving forward with State of the City, staff would have to do additional research and come up with a solution. And that's it. And these 3 work plans will help help make San Fernando a vibrant and sustainable city. Hopefully, thank you.
Thank you, Kanika. And just I think we can come back to the State of the City address, but we do this Attorney General opinion is actually it's hot off the press, so we need to understand that I think a little bit better and how that impacts many cities that have these. So we'll be talking about it a lot in our professional organizations, I have a feeling, over the next month or 2. Next slide, please, Erica. So we just have one recommended enhancement in the city manager's office. It's relatively modest, just about $2,000 for marketing materials for the BCRC. This is kind of a generic title. What we're really kind of looking for is invest in some refreshed branded marketing materials. We even talked about it a little earlier with when we talked about use of the city seal, but even trademarking our own seal. And we want to look at acquiring some new pop-up banners, portable PA system, branded table covers, and other giveaways, both through the city and through the BCRC to just enhance our name recognition in the area. And then also look at a self-help kiosk. There's a few kiosks that we want to look at throughout the city. One potentially at the BCRC, also maybe over at Las Palmas and Rec Park, some of our community centers where folks can access some of the services that are provided provided by the city through the BCRC. So this $2,000 would be a modest investment in more name recognition and enhancing the city's footprint in economic development. And then, so for performance measures, a few years ago, we added more performance measures into the budget. In addition to just having performance measures as part of a good policy document, these were also things that used to be performance measures used to be optional for our GFOA, our Government Finance Officers Association budget award, and they became mandatory a few years ago. So I think that was a really good decision by them because it forced our cities, and City Council also, wanted this data to be able to move forward. So we have more. Now that we've had about 2 or 3 years of performance measures, there's some data. There is data in each department, and for us in our policy, some of our performance measures are related to policy and policy implementation. So the measures in there are intended to measure how we're supporting City Council's policy development efforts, how we're managing community outreach and communication, and then how we're advocating with federal, state, and local elected officials. The goals, again, are to maintain efforts to support good City Council policy decisions, increasing information and outreach, and then increasing our legislative advocacy. From an economic development standpoint, again, the measures are really what we're trying to do through the measure is enhancing business activity and the tax base in the city, and also leveraging outside funding to benefit San Fernando. And our goals, again, we want to increase our net new business license issued. We want to continually increase the sales tax generated by local businesses, then also increase grant funding received for investment in San Fernando. So that's sort of an overview of our performance measures. Real quick, our current organizational chart, which this is the staffing and the resources we have to support moving our work plan forward. You can see this is our current org chart, which includes personnel, has economic development, personnel, and administration. And our proposed org chart moves personnel to finance to the new administrative services department. It keeps our administration division, economic development, and then it calls out contract services because there is effort involved in managing that. So that is the budget presentation for the city manager's office. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I got distracted briefly when you were talking about the BCRC. Can you just repeat what that is again? I apologize.
Yeah, so the BCRC is our Business and Community Resource Center, which just opened up over here. So the enhancement request, is that what you were?
The $2,000 for it.
Yeah, so it's primarily for marketing, marketing materials. So I had the page, here we go. So $2,000 is for a new pop-up banner, a portable PA system, branded table covers for when we're boothing at other events, giveaways, pens, things like that, and then potentially part like a self-help kiosk that we could use. People could access services from other city facilities.
Okay. Any questions, Councilmember Sawyer, at this time? No, not right now. Okay.
I think it's a reasonable request, $2,000.
My question is actually to clarify the $2,000. In the draft budget that we have, it was actually $6,500 in ongoing and $2,000 in one time. So is your recommendation changing? Just to clarify the full request.
Yeah, so in the enhancements page, I'm sorry.
So if you look at page 18 in our budget,
Okay.
when it's categorized under community, so page 18, item B.
Yes. So that is actually the ongoing you'll see is part of the recreation budget. That 6,500 is actually for the social services piece of it. So this will be in two different. The 2,000 is on the business economic development side. The 6,500 you'll see is a request on the recreation side, more for. It's basically we created the social services division for Christina Moreno currently works in there, but we didn't really give her a budget to like buy supplies and go to training and do development. So that 6,500 is actually an operating budget for her.
So we'll see, I guess, direct oversight of the resource center is by whom?
Direct oversight of the
Business and Community Resource Center.
So because there are multiple activities that are done in that housing, social services, and businesses, which don't always fall under the same person. It actually has so Julio's recreation's directly overseeing social services. Kanika oversees the business, and actually Erica Ramirez oversees the housing. But they have regular coordination meetings to make sure that they're all sort of on the same page. That is one of the things we trying to figure out how to do, because there is a lot of overlap.
So in totality,
Yeah.
it will be $8,500 for the BCRC, but we'll be hearing it in two different
That is correct.
departments. Okay,
That's correct.
I hope that's helpful to everyone else too when it comes up again, that it is a separate request.
One comment I would make is I do think that that's important, the $2,000, because I would like to see the Business and Community Resource Center like going out to the community. I know that in order to reach certain businesses or individuals, they'll have to do that. So I could see how a portable speaker and banner would be useful.
Also, the PA system is terrible. So I'm excited to see that we were looking for a new one on behalf of anyone who's had to speak through it or hear from it. Okay, I think we're ready for the next department.
Thank you, and that will be Julia Fritz with the City Clerk's Office.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. Tonight, I will be presenting the fiscal year 2024-25 budget presentation for the City Clerk Department. The City Clerk Department's core services are records management, which is documenting, storing, organizing, and providing access to the city's legislative history, meeting administration, supporting, facilitating, and accurately recording the city's legislative meeting actions, and finally, elections administration, facilitating and supporting local elections oversight. The city clerk's baseline operating budget, I will go ahead and highlight that in 2025, there should be an enhancement, or I'm sorry, there should be an amount there for the upcoming elections. However, they did not include that amount in this, as it is an enhancement, so that it was not included in the baseline operating funds. Also, there's some slight increases in the operating budget for the city clerk division due to regular CPI and contract services increases. And that concludes my baseline budget. Our proposed work plan. The first proposed work plan we have listed is records management. And this is to access existing inventory of records, identify areas for improvement, and determine goals and objectives for a new records retention policy. Also to develop and implement an updated citywide records retention policy and provide staff training and review procedures quarterly for compliance and effectiveness. Proposed work plan for meeting administration. This would include agenda preparation, meeting notice distribution, meeting facilitation, coordination with other departments regarding pre-meeting and post-meeting follow-up actions, facilitating public participation by coordinating opportunities for citizens to address the council, and prepare and process final meeting minutes and conform staff reports. Proposed work plan for the election administration is to oversee and administer the city's November 5th, 2024 general election and maintain the integrity of local elections and foster civic engagement. The city clerk has two proposed enhancements. The first under the records management is an enhancement for a consultant to assist with updating the city's almost 24-year-old records retention policy. The policy is currently outdated and does not meet industry standards, and that amount is for $8,500. Under the elections administration for elections, the proposed enhancement is for the cost to contract with the County of Los Angeles and consolidate elections-related services for the upcoming November 2024 general election. Performance measures include efforts to support public trust and transparency in government, efforts to improve government policy standards, and efforts in staff efficiency and consistency on processes and procedures. And the next one is our current organization chart. Finally, to support the core services of records management, meeting and elections administration, the department's organization chart consists of the city clerk and the deputy city clerk management analyst. And that concludes my presentation this evening, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Could you please put back your measures and goals?
Sure.
Councilman Fajardo?
No, it was very short and sweet.
Councilmember Solorio? Yeah. Okay. This means you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you.
Reasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're ready for the next department.
Oh, thank you.
I thought you were gonna drill her on her performance measures. I was waiting.
No, I just.
Yeah, me too.
No, no. I just noticed kind of like the goals and the measures I think are inverted because I was trying to look for the numerical value, and so I just needed to see it so I can
Gotcha. Yeah,
take it in.
We actually had a debate, a spirited debate this afternoon on whether they should be called goals or measures, and so
Yeah,
you,
yeah. I wish I was there because I feel like I disagree where you landed, but I understood what your objectives are. So thank you for your presentation.
so next is our administrative services department, formerly known as the finance department.
Maybe. So we're clear, it's a proposal.
I was going to start it off that way. Of course, I am presenting for the recommended Administrative Services Department. And of course, the most pronounced change that you will see is the recommendation to change the title of the department from Finance to Administrative Services. The reason for this is so that we can really operate as a centralized support service entity for department operations, which will house financial stewardship, human resource management, as well as IT management. So we become, again, the support for all of the departments in those areas. Financial stewardship will incorporate planning and monitoring the city's fiscal affairs, including making sure that departments, as we have the budget approved, monitoring, assisting them in efforts to enter requisitions, making sure that the purchasing policy is adhered to, all of the financial policies are adhered to, human resource management, attracting and retaining a highly qualified workforce, as well as mitigating risk through our risk management efforts, and finally, IT management, which incorporates supporting, securing, and monitoring technology and network systems. The baseline operating budget, we are proposing an increase from 4.6 million to 5.1 million. A lot of that is predominantly due to the transition of both human resources and, again, proposing and recommending a change from personnel to human resources and risk management, in addition to overseeing the labor attorney contractual services because it aligns with human resources. Other increases are predominantly CPI as well as MOU labor increases. I will highlight that there is also a decrease in the non-departmental services division. That division is more of a catch-all for items that don't necessarily fit neatly within a department. And I'll give an example, utilities. We pay the city utilities out of that. In addition, all of the transfers happen out of that particular division. Last year, we did a huge transfer out of the general fund to capital outlay for the HVAC at PD, and so those transfers occur out of the non-departmental services division. And what you see in there is a significant drop due to that transfer not, of course, continuing because it was a one-time. For the proposed work plan, under the financial stewardship core service area, it will include updating the city's grant policies and procedures. This was an area that was identified in our annual comprehensive financial report, requiring a little attention in the upcoming year. We just want to assure, as we're receiving more funds from state entities, national entities, as well as any other agencies that want to, again, support and help offset our general fund, that we're able to do so in a way that's consistent and upholds the general accounting standards. And so we want to use this as an opportunity to review and update our grant policy and procedures, which will also include ensuring that all city staff who are part of, again, helping to manage those are trained on them as well. And as a part of our policy, we're also ensuring that as we receive and are awarded grants, each time it's another opportunity to make sure that that area that's getting and managing that is, again, well-versed in the city's policies as it relates to grants. We will continue to apply for the GFOA's Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. We were recently, and I highlighted this at our last council meeting, we were recently notified that we were awarded for our last year's budget, 23-24. So we want to continue in that spirit of excellence in the upcoming year and continue to apply for and receive that award, in addition to the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which I believe the city has received for a number of years also. In the human resource management area, as mentioned, we have 3 bargaining units that currently we're negotiating MOUs for, updated MOUs. And so, of course, human resource management will be assisting with that negotiation as well as implementation of those new MOUs. Conducting annual review of the city's administrative and personnel rules. The personnel rules haven't been reviewed for some time now, so it's an opportunity to go back, revisit those, and make sure that they're up to date. Establishing leadership development training for management team. We've talked a lot about ensuring that we're investing in professional development throughout the city, and so there's a number of areas in order to ensure that those core values are integrated throughout the city. And again, everyone's well trained on it, so the goal is to continue that. And then finally, creating a new employee evaluation form that incorporates those core values as a part of the measurement standard throughout the city and for all employees. In the IT management core service area, the work plan will include reviewing and updating the city's IT, cyber security policies and procedures. And again, this is just making sure that we're up to date, that our policies and procedures are modernized with a very evolving landscape in technology. For the proposed enhancements, I'm going to now hand it over to our team. So I'm going to hand it over to Sergio to talk about human resources, and then from there, Art Zialov to talk about financial stewardship, which integrates a technology component in addition to IT management.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Sergio Ibarra, Human Resources and Risk Manager. The budget enhancements that we're proposing for the Human Resources Division align with the city's core values, including providing quality of work, excellent customer service, serving our diverse customer base, and stewardship of our city. We have $4,500 for tuition reimbursement, which is we've encouraged our staff to continue with their education to develop their skills so we can increase our knowledge and to provide quality of service for our residents and our internal customers. So as part of the MOU, employees are entitled to get tuition reimbursement. So our staff will be continuing to get their HR certificates, and also they're going to be going after their AA, and it looks like an MPA as well. We're also requesting funds for professional education, continuing education funds. In human resources, we have a very short shelf life when it comes to knowledge. The laws are constantly changing every single year. So in order to make sure that my staff and myself are on top of those, we attend professional conferences, including the CalPERS conference, the California Labor Relations Conference at LCW, which is our Liebert Cassidy labor education conferences. We also attend the local human resources chapter as well at their one-day conferences. Additionally, we're requesting, as part of our transition from personnel to human resources and risk management, is a reclassification of a part-time position from office clerk to administrative assistant to more clearly reflect the additional duties that they're going to be providing, including training and development, assisting with workers' compensation claims and liability claims, and this will reflect more of the skills and knowledge that we need in that position. Staff is available to answer any questions related to human resources, and I'll hand it over to our IT manager.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Art Zialov, City's IT Systems Administrator here. The city's IT division has identified a few critical enhancements that we want to achieve for the next fiscal year. The first enhancement is for upgrading the city's existing Tyler Eden financial system to allow us to maintain the necessary compliance, increase security, productivity, and efficiency across all city departments. In regards to our core IT operations, there are two enhancements that we've identified. Our first enhancement of $25,000 will allow the city to augment our IT staffing resources and services through a new agreement with a well-qualified IT managed services provider. The second enhancement of $25,000 will allow our citywide computer lifecycle replacement program to continue, which would allow us to upgrade older generation computers across all departments to allow city staff to be more efficient and productive by leveraging the latest hardware that's built into computers. And with that, I'll pass it to Erica for the next slide.
Thank you so much, both Art and Sergio. For the way that we will be measuring the services for administrative services, under financial stewardship, our goal was to establish measures that provide detail with regards to the financial transaction services to all internal departments and citywide customers, as well as maximizing our city's return on surplus funds. And with that, our goal is to increase digital transactions through improved technology. That includes the rollout of our Paymentus online utility billing service, which we are hoping to roll out next month, which we're very excited about, and improving return on investments with the goal of hiring a financial advisory services, which has been a part of our work plan. For human resource management, performance measures are designed to measure the recruitment and retention of talented employees in strategies. Our goal is increasing marketing and advertising for ongoing as well as seasonal recruitments. We plan on ensuring that we're training and developing, of course, current staff, delivering exceptional customer service to internal staff and external customers, as well as increasing employee retention through active employee engagement and employee recognition programs. And finally, in the area of IT management, our measure is to provide professional IT support to all city staff and foster strategic partnerships with all departments, ensuring optimal performance, integrity, security, and resilience of our city's IT infrastructure. And our goals over the next year, especially with the transition of our managed service provider, as well as ensuring that we've got up-to-date technology, is the reduced number of help desk tickets, because that should decline as we've got better technology and a better service provider. The way that we plan to implement all of this is to transition from our current organizational chart, which right now is comprised of the finance division as well as IT division, into, again, the administrative services department, which is what is being proposed in this process this year. We do have a management intern that we will share. It currently exists under finance, but it will be shared amongst the three divisions. From there, we've got finance, treasury division, human resource, and risk management division, followed by our IT division. And that concludes the proposed administrative services department presentation, and I welcome your questions at this time.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, regarding the utility payment, I suppose that just simply means water, correct?
That means water, electricity. We pay all of our utilities out of that non-departmental account. So yes, it includes all utilities.
Okay.
And we do pay for our own water service.
Perfect. Actually, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions? Ms.
I had a question. I noticed that there is a kind of contract services department, but in this instance, the contract service for labor attorneys in this department. So I'm just wondering why this one's different.
Sure. We were treating it differently because labor and human resources, they're a little bit more intertwined. A lot of our labor attorney services are related to grievances, And so for that reason, we thought it would be best for it to be administered alongside human resources.
Okay, and then my second question is, there's an element of grants in this department, but at least in last year, I know that Mr. Hernandez was in the city manager's office and was very heavily involved in writing proposals for grants, and that's a different department. So how would that work here?
Sure. That particular position has been incredibly instrumental in grant writing and grant acquisition. However, the finance division is responsible for financial management of the city. And so in terms of that, we're managing and monitoring, and we're ensuring that everything is spent as it's allowed. And so although they have overlap, they do service different areas of grants.
So is the intention to keep the assistant to the city manager as the grant writer?
That's correct, because there's a lot of work in researching grants. There's a lot of work in writing grants, and that just does not really fit within the capacity nor the scope of our department. However, what does fit is ensuring that, again, we're following generally accepted accounting practices with regards to how they are managed and accounted for.
If I can offer, you'll be doing compliance.
That is correct.
Did you have any more questions?
No, that's it.
Vice Mayor?
I'd just like to say that I can relate with the proposed administrative services because when I worked at Los Angeles Mission College, that's how they were structured. So that's the entire LA Community College District. So I think it's good.
I'm also supportive of the new structure. Each of you support every single department in the city. And so I think it's a really great recommendation. I did have specific questions for IT and human resources. First, for IT, currently, is there training for city staff to be aware of risky emails and phishing and things like that?
Yes. So, beginning in January, we implemented KnowBe4, which is a popular phishing assessment training platform.
Mhm.
And we've piloted a couple of simulations with staff. And so that's in the works. The idea is to set up a biannual assessment and training sessions with staff so that everybody's caught up with the latest trends of business email compromise, phishing, scam, and identifying and being more cognizant of how to identify scams.
So you already have the resources you need
Yes.
to continue that? Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Is council offered that training as well?
So what we're gonna be doing, any new employee coming in the door, that first week, they're assigned mandated anti-harassment training, some other training as well. As part of that, they also get the email security and cybersecurity training as well. So we're going to be rolling that out citywide. We're also going to be implementing what's called multi-factor authentication citywide as part of our strategic initiative to increase cybersecurity in the city. And we're going to be doing that with our new MSP coming on board as of July. So what we can do is we can also offer that cybersecurity training to City Council, and Art has the ability to send that out. The
Yeah,
program that's called KnowBe4.
Okay, I think that would be great. I know that some of us have seen some pretty persistent issues lately with our own emails. So I think that would be helpful. And then my other question is, what is our current vacancy rate in the city, and what is a good vacancy rate?
So there's always going to be turnover, especially in the current economy that we're in right now. A lot of the cities are fighting for the same talent. So that's why it's really important that we offer great benefits and also making sure that our pay is competitive. I know that the city has been doing a great job to achieve that. We're seeing the results of that with filling key strategic positions. Of course, for example, Mr. Hernandez is going to be leaving to another city, so that's normal part of of turnaround, a turnover. So a good measure would be like between a 3 and 4% turnover rate. We experience high turnover when it comes to part-time employees because, as we want them to get full-time jobs, right? So they come here with the city, we treat them well, we train them, and we would love to keep more staff here and promote from within. And that's what Nick is doing and the management team. And what we're doing is we're taking more of a coaching approach for our staff to really develop the future leaders here of the city. And one of the programs that we have and the tools is our management intern program that we currently have. It would be great to expand that program. We're going to be also exploring partnerships with our local universities to offer fellowships and to partner up with the local Masters in Public Administration programs to partner up with them to offer volunteer internships here in the city.
And what is our current vacancy rate?
We can send that out to City Council. We'll get a calculation and we can send that out. Right now, we're almost full of all of our full-time positions. Some of the key positions that we're still, like for example, we just got a letter of resignation for one of our police desk officers. So we're making real great progress to fill every vacancy. Like offhand, I know for sure we have the police desk officer. We're filling some police officer positions, some positions in public works as well that we're looking to fill that are more harder to fill because they require specialized training and certificates. Like for example, the senior sewer worker is hard to recruit for. So we're working towards that.
And I wonder, and this can be for future discussion as well, but the idea of creating opportunities for our current employees. For example, I know like we have many more recreation leaders than we have like full-time opportunities in the city. But I know that we've had trouble in the past and even now filling like our entry-level maintenance positions. And sometimes there's some basic requirements and experience required that perhaps we as a city can provide workforce opportunities so that those trainings can happen from within so that they are eligible to apply for those positions.
Yes, we're actually seeing a turnaround in the economy. We're starting to see more applications come in, especially for entry-level maintenance worker positions. What I did is I reached out to our local WorkSource Center, which is in Sun Valley. We're going to be scheduling a tour and a meeting to see how we can partner up with them to bring additional resources here to the city of San Fernando and our residents here. We're going to be partnering up with our deputy city manager. Me and her are going to be meeting with them. They offer a lot of resources. There's going to be a lot of jobs that are going to be created, especially in the public works field with the construction of the San Fernando Valley East Light Rail construction that's going to happen. And I want to make sure that our residents here in the city of San Fernando are aware of those opportunities and can apply for them. And one of the facilitations that will happen is going to be through the WorkSource Center.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think also though there's an opportunity to look at diversity in our workforce. I think especially when it comes to these opportunities with our maintenance teams, we don't have a lot of women at all. I'm not sure how many, if you know, Mr. Kimball, but it seems like there's an opportunity to help diversify and recruit for maybe traditionally underserved who are from our community and can do the work, but haven't really been outreached to in the past. Are there any other questions? Okay.
All right, we're making good time. We might hit the 8:55 mark. So our next is our community development department. And thank you, potential administrative services department.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. I am Erica Ramirez, Director of Community Development, and I will be presenting the Community Development Department budget presentation this evening. The Community Development Department is made up of 4 divisions: planning, building and safety, community preservation, and housing, working together to provide services and resources that can be grouped into 3 core categories, which are land use and development, neighborhood preservation, and housing resources. Planning, building and safety, and community preservation provide guidance to residents, businesses, and property owners regarding what their land can be used for, how it can be developed, and what regulations must be maintained. All 4 divisions are involved in some aspect of neighborhood preservation, leading community engagement activities, implementing new ordinances, sharing information about city regulations, and connecting households with resources to stay housed, all contribute to maintaining and enhancing the quality of life for those that live, visit, and work in San Fernando. The revitalized housing division primarily provides the core service of housing resources by connecting housed and unhoused residents to resources. However, the planning division also engages in this core service area as it relates to facilitating the development of housing through implementing the programs and policies set forth in the city's housing element. Each of the 4 division baseline budgets is represented in this chart. Each division includes staff time dedicated to that division, supplies and funds for staff training and professional development, including attending conferences in each of the respective areas of specialization. In addition, building and safety, planning, and community preservation each have funds dedicated for professional services to provide technical or professional assistance to the department as needed. I'd like to note that each of the divisions have had a slight decrease reflected by shifts in employees. Also, many services will be provided through the enhancements on the next slides. The Community Development Department has identified 4 major projects related to the land use and development core service area to be completed. The first is related to the automatic solar permitting system that is currently under development. It is to be completed by the end of this fiscal year, but is expected to be launched on the website on the onset of the new fiscal year. This is to comply with the state law. In addition, community development will be working with IT and other departments to set up kiosks by the second quarter of fiscal year 24-25. The next 3 projects have been altered because of the effects of the state deficit has had on the REAP 2.0 grant funds that were awarded to the city of San Fernando. As you may recall, the city was awarded funds from 2 pots of REAP 2.0 funds. One was a sub-regional allocation, and the other was through the competitive grant known as HIP. We have had preliminary discussions with SCAG, and we're expecting to have formal meetings and conversations regarding the outcome of the award, but we are expecting that we will receive a portion of the funds that were awarded through the HIP grant, but most likely not those that were awarded as part of the sub-regional allocation. The city's proposal for the sub-regional allocation included implementing a mixed-use overlay, developing single-family, multifamily, mixed-use, and commercial objective design standards, and a list of zoning code amendments to align with state housing laws. These are projects identified in the city's housing element implementation plan. The most vital is the mixed-use overlay. This is because the city is required to complete the rezoning of parcels identified in the city's housing element to accommodate higher residential densities by October 2024. The delay in the release of funds has created a delay in the city being able to initiate these projects. This has required the Community Development Department to revise the project scopes for the mixed-use overlay and of the objective design standards, as well as to separate them into individual projects to reduce the overall cost. This modification will allow the city to initiate these projects within the department's current and upcoming budget. Having a bench of approved on-call planning professionals allows the city to engage a firm by issuing a call for service rather than issuing an RFP. Based on the current community development budget and proposals received from those pre-approved firms, a selection has been made and the mixed-use overlay will soon be initiated and completed next fiscal year. Creating objective design standards for multifamily and mixed-use developments will be prioritized next fiscal year with approved funds from professional services in the building and safety and planning budgets. Lastly, funds in this fiscal year have been allocated for some of the zoning code amendments identified in the housing element, but that work will be initiated next fiscal year once the mixed-use overlay is completed. Community development will be taking on another 4 major projects under Neighborhood Preservation Core Service Area. The CARP has been kicked off, and while it will not be completed until 2026, much of the community engagement planning and activities will occur during next fiscal year. Outdoor dining will come to fruition in fiscal year 2024-2025. I've been working with Public Works Engineering Division to develop ordinances that will allow outdoor dining on public sidewalks and on private property. A landscape ordinance will be initiated and mostly funded with this year's budget, but the majority of the work up to completion will be slated for fiscal year 2024-2025. This will incorporate recommendations from the Urban Forest Management Plan, prohibition of artificial turf, and standards to facilitate rebates from MWD for drought-tolerant and native landscaping. Lastly, the community preservation team will be systematically visiting all commercial and business owners over the course of the next fiscal year to share information regarding common code violations, such as oversaturation of window signage, having a current business license, and maintaining a functional business sign. The goal is for shop owners and property owners to comply with zoning codes that address commercial uses and properties. Under the core service area of providing housing resources, the Housing Division will enhance homeowner and tenant education programs to inform individuals of their rights and available resources for assistance, conduct regular events, workshops, and forums to actively engage residents and promote awareness of housing and homeless-related services programs within the community, and establish multi-year agreements to expand and enhance programs addressing homelessness and homelessness prevention, ensuring sustained support for both homeless services and initiatives aimed at preventing homelessness. 3 enhancements are being requested for the Community Development Department. The first is an ongoing enhancement for an additional staff member, specifically a deputy director / planning manager. This individual will assist in providing all major categories of core services, as they will assist with overall management of the department, but they will focus on the ever-increasing legislative mandates pertaining to development, assisting and overseeing major projects such as those described in previous slides, and lead the housing element implementation programs that pertain to land use and zoning. The second recommended ongoing enhancement is for the annual postcard to be mailed out to all residential properties citywide. This assists in providing targeted information pertaining to property maintenance and advise of any proactive enforcement that may occur. The third enhancement is for a part-time on-site contractor for the building division. This person will greatly assist in answering applicant questions regarding construction drawings, will be able to review simple construction plans such as patio covers and small additions rather than sending them out to our third-party plan reviewer. In addition, this allows the building division to coordinate with police, fire, community preservation, and others when a building may need to be red tagged. Overall, this will improve the efficiency and operation of the division and provide quality customer service. The Community Development Department's work plan, projects, and enhancements tied to the core service area of land use and development aim at providing an efficient, streamlined review process of development and permit applications, especially geared towards supporting the state's goal of facilitating the construction of affordable housing. Because many of the activities include improving because many of the activities include improving electronic processing of applications and permits, we are anticipating a reduction in counter inquiries, but an increase in overall applications and permits received for processing. The core service category of neighborhood preservation have activities that are centered on community engagement and the physical environment. The goal is to enhance the caliber and frequency of interaction with the community through the CARP outreach activities and the various ordinances that will be enacted, as well as through the face-to-face visits and printing mailings from community preservation. Overall, the Community Development Department hopes to elevate the aesthetic charm in neighborhoods through this core service category of neighborhood preservation. This will be demonstrated through an increased number of items brought before the Planning and Preservation Commission, as well as Council. It will also see an increase in initiated and closed code cases. Lastly, the core service area providing housing resources will be mainly provided by establishing growing partnerships that will result in establishing regularly quarterly events, increasing the number of residents that stay housed, and increase the number of unhoused that are placed in temporary housing. All of the core services and work plan activities in the Community Development Department are being supported by staff as follows. Here we have the organizational chart from the previous fiscal year. It's been slightly modified for the upcoming fiscal year to account for the recommended position. Here we have the proposed and requested deputy director, planning manager that will be directly under the department head. The community development technician has also been shifted in the chart to demonstrate the position's department-wide tasks. Lastly, the community preservation officers are all grouped under the preservation division. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
And if I may, Madam Mayor, just real quick to a little bit more on the position, because this is the only full-time position that we're recommending. So I wanted to just add a little bit of context too. So community development is actually the only division, or the only department that does not have supervisors or a middle manager position. So this would kind of serve that function. So now each department, if council approves this position, each department would now sort of have a path to the director, so to speak, where there's a ladder that at least internally people could develop and move up and have those experiences of managing other folks and helping and setting vision and policy. I would also say that planning in particular, there's a lot of like long range plans. They're big efforts. I mean, we know the Climate Action Resiliency Plan is a big effort. We have general plan update, which is very, very outdated, most of our general plan, and then housing elements. So there's a lot of statutory requirements that we need to comply with through housing. Through the planning function. And we've kind of been getting by the last few years just using contractors, and but we spend a lot of time managing those contractors, and a lot of times the contractors will just give you a boilerplate. And if we have our own sort of planning manager position, it will just provide more resources so that those long-term, long-range plans are more suited and tailored to San Fernando. And I think this is so that's why we put forward this position in particular as being one that would be important for the organization to really consider as a net new position for this particular year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
One of the things that really interests me is having better oversight with code enforcement on commercial properties. I know that you spoke about, for example, having an oversaturation of, I don't know what you call it, but like stickers or marketing materials on the windows. I think that's great. So at some point you'll be coming back to the city council then with a list of things that you're going to start enforcing or looking into, or how does that process unfold? And will it be inclusive of trash in the parking lots?
So right now, what we're planning is, and we're actually working with our city manager's office in regards to the assistant to the city manager. She's helping us create a flyer. And so what we're going to do is the way that we approach residential enforcement is the way we're going to approach commercial. So we're going to create a flyer that describes all of the different common code violations. We're going to be educating shop owners and property owners by explaining to them what are the different common code violations, and we're going to be doing it systematically. So we'll begin with a certain area of the commercial corridor, but we'll be visiting every property in the commercial corridor over the course of the fiscal year. So we'll start with an education of it, and then we'll come back and advise them in terms of if they have any violations, what they are, and they will begin the noticing process. So that's what what we're proposing as part of the enforcement action, and that's the program that we're planning to bring. But we will be bringing an item to provide an update as to code enforcement and where we are, because we have made a lot of progress that we would like to share with the council.
Okay.
And through the mayor, if I may, we did just, I think at the last meeting, we introduced our final kind of community preservation officer hire, because we went from, we had one full-time community preservation officer and one part-time at one time. It was very minimal staffing. Now we have 3 full-time and 2 part-time. So we've significantly increased those resources, but they're both very new employees. So we're working through, just getting them up to speed and making sure they understand, the process and what we're working on. And then we'll start priority. I think the process of priority setting with the city council, I believe is something, again, Erica mentioned. We've found, and I think this is the direction we've seen from council in the past, is start with education and then move to enforcement. We did that on the residential side last year with the postcard, like Erica mentioned, that said these are the types of things that are violations, and then now and then we move to enforcement. We want to do the same thing with the commercial, and we'll bring that forward to council for additional feedback on how you'd like, if there are certain priorities that the council would like to see, that we can certainly make sure we put into that postcard and then put into an enforcement.
So is that inclusive of cleanliness of lots, of parking lots? Because some of them just look abysmal sometimes. You go there and there's, littered with trash.
So for private property, that's part of the ones that are listed on there is general private property maintenance.
Okay, got it.
And we do issue notices to comply when there are, because on private property, when there's a trash enclosure and the trash is not within that, the physical area of that enclosure, we can and will issue notices to comply to make sure that they are within that trash enclosure. And also, obviously, it's that blowing around that.
Yeah, a lot of like loose trash all over the place. Is there anything in code enforcement for the quality or of the pavement itself? I mean, some parking lots look like they haven't been repaved in, decades, major cracks. Some of them have areas where they're lifting, and others are a lot newer, cleaner looking and more modern looking. I know that we've obviously have like a pavement study for our streets. Is there anything that's in the code enforcement rules with regards to how up to date, so to speak, the asphalt has to be?
I would say not in regards to like the age but there is a requirement in regards to overall maintenance. And so when we do receive those complaints, we do go out to assess it. If they are safety issues, then that would fall more under not necessarily the building code, but more of a safety issue.
Hmm.
But if it's in regards to having like lighter, if it's just kind of regular wear and tear, then that's kind of a little bit of it's more difficult to
Got
find
it.
the code to address that.
And are lots are these parcels required to have trash enclosures? Or can they just have the trash bin out in the open? Like those large blue Republic trash bins.
For commercial properties?
Yes.
I'd have to come back with.
It's
a
okay. So once this
requirement.
comes back to us, I'm sure I'll have an abundance of questions. I'm just excited that this is coming forward. I know it's been a long time in the works, and we've obviously been short-staffed, but this is welcomed news and much needed. So I look forward to seeing that come before us.
Councilmember Garcia, do you have any questions? Vice Mayor Mendoza?
No questions, just a comment in regards to the position. I think it is something that's important that we are in compliance with the state and local regulations. And having someone in that position would put us right in the right spot, especially with all the changes that are constantly occurring and that we're receiving from the state. And we need to be in compliance. I think that's very important. We've not had the sufficient staff to be able to do that. And in addition, what I really appreciate is the ladder, because we're using we spend a lot of money, we put a lot of, we invest in our employees in training, and I think that it's a good ladder to be able to maintain those employees. And if that provides a ladder for them to stay, I think that's a really good part of this position. So, thank you.
I'd actually like to dive into the ladder concept. And this goes for the different presentations we've had today. I really appreciate you all referencing, creating this new position as an opportunity for internal growth. But how can we be assured that it will be an internal opportunity? Because consistently we add staffing positions, a very large number over the last few years, and finally fill whole. But I've heard from even a commissioner today about opportunities not really being offered from within or for the community. And instead, obviously we look for the best talent, but at the same time, it's being kind of described as a specific opportunity for growth within. So how are we ensuring that it is going to be filled from within if that's the way it's being presented?
So I would, I mean, to be completely honest, I think a lot of these new positions, we encourage, and actually oftentimes, and maybe we'll get that information too on how many internal employees have applied for these jobs, because oftentimes we do have internal employees apply. But I think there are many cases, because we have not had these opportunities for some employees to grow or do things outside of what their kind of narrow scope is. They haven't had they haven't been the most qualified for that position. What we're trying to do is fill. I don't want to handicap the organization by only having it internal, right? So I want to fill
Which I do
these.
think that's important, but I want us to be very careful with
Yeah.
the way it's being described to council then.
Yes, right. So I would say the second generation of many of these positions is the idea that when we that those certainly the person could be from internal, right? We'd have to go through see who the best qualified candidate is. If that person's not internal, the idea is that the external person that comes into that position will then be able to model and coach the folks below them. So now that they know what is needed to make that step to that position. So then they could be, the next iteration could be internal. And I'll just give, I mean, I think the police department is a really great example of a lot of our employees have been coached up quite a bit over the last 2 years, where I don't know that many of them would have been, 2 years ago, they may not have been ready to take that step. But now many of them have been more involved. They've been coached up. There's been behavior that's been modeled that we want to see here. And now they're much more ready to take that step. And I think that's some of these positions that are new, mean that we might not have anyone immediately ready, but the idea is that we have a position and can coach them up so that in 5 years from now, there are 1 or 2 folks ready to take that position. So
Thank you for providing a full picture of that, because I think that's a more fair way to be able to see these new opportunities. I also wanted to ask 2 questions. One for clarification for the Director of Administrative Services. Who would that be?
that would be Erica's position. And there's no, there are a number of title changes that we would need to come back to City Council for job specs. We wouldn't, there's no compensation associated with any of them other than the title changes that would be associated. So if it is approved to change it, there's two actually. There's the Administrative Services Department, so that would be the finance director would then become the director of administrative services. And then also right now we refer to our division, our personnel division as personnel and personnel manager, personnel technician. Those are very sort of antiquated title references, sort of the more modern references, human resource. So again, we would come back with just just changing those titles as well if it's approved.
So who would be the lead of the finance and treasury division? Just so I understand, right? Because you were asking for a structural change, and for us, we know the people, right? But and I don't know if this is helpful to clarify for anyone else, but
We
just
haven't
the
made,
shift. Are you asking for any new positions with the new model?
we are not asking for any new positions at this time.
Will it be asked for soon? Is there some sort of shift in here we need to be aware of?
No, no. Currently, all we're asking for is that the structure change so that human resources is shifted over under administrative services and that the department title is changed and accordingly because it would be administrative services as a department in turn that the title for my position would change accordingly.
Okay.
And if I may, Mayor, just since so Sergio is our manager over, that would be the manager over human resources. Art is the manager that's over IT. They're both management positions, and Sonia, as the senior accountant, is sort of the manager over the finance section. So
Understood. Okay, thank you. And my last question is, again, when it comes to these opportunities for growth, because we're having a transition right now with our assistant to the city manager, what is the next step for that position to ensure that, we don't lose someone again? Because obviously, we had a really valued member of the team, and I'm just wondering, what is the progression for that position? So as we recruit, what is the plan there?
sure, the typical progression is assistant to city manager, deputy city manager, city manager. Sometimes the assistant to might even that person's very involved in executive management team, so that oftentimes they could even make the jump to city manager. I will say just the nature of that particular position is that you tend to be hiring a go-getter, someone that's very ambitious, someone that you say, this is what the output is. I need a coyote coexistence plan. And that's what you tell them, and they run with it. They do all the research. That's the type of person I need, and we need to support that. Historically, those tend to be individuals that, 3 to 5 years, they're ambitious and they're looking to move up. So that's a position that we hope that we have something for them. And even Carlos, if you were here, we were giving him opportunities outside of that because I understood that. So he was, he worked with the Parks and Rec department while that was vacant, and same thing with the Public Works department. So that assistant too will get we give them a lot of opportunities. We're going to hire a go-getter. And when those opportunities come up to do things other places, I always try to give that person that experience, because then again, maybe they'll be ready to jump into that position if a director position comes open here.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? All right.
Thank you. And we are at our final presentation for the night, and that is Mr. Julio Salcedo with Recreation and Community Services. Thank you, Erica.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Julio Salcedo. I'm the Director for Recreation and Community Services Department. The core services for our Recreation and Community Services Department can be divided into 4 areas. For the area of administration, administration is sorry. Apologize. For the area administration, our administration division oversees the day-to-day operations of the whole department. We research and identify the recreational needs and desires of our citizens, and we design and implement programs that meet those needs. In the area of community services, the Community Services Division provides key administrative functions, supervision, and analysis for the social programs, services, and activities that are offered to our community. The division is responsible for identifying potential funding sources and maintaining existing contracts. In the area of recreation, the Recreation Division is responsible for providing social, physical, and educational recreation programs that offer access to healthier lifestyle to all of our San Fernando residents. In the area of special and cultural events, the Cultural Arts and Special Events Division is responsible for conducting an oversight for citywide sponsored and non-sponsored special and cultural events for the department. These events can include private events, but they also include the citywide sponsored events such as Spring Jamboree, 4th of July celebration, movies at the park, concerts at the park, Dia de los Muertos Cultural Festival, San Fernando Mile, and the Holiday Tree Lighting Ceremony, among others. What you have in front of you right now is the baseline operating funding that we're requesting. In these areas, if I may point out, in the area of recreation, you're going to see an increase that has to do with labor distribution and increases in CPI and MOU agreements. In the area of special events, you're going to see a decrease that is sort of like neutralized by the area of community services. This has to do with the newly created position of social services coordinator that in 2024, it was placed under special events, and in 2025, it's been put in the right place as in community services. Our proposed work plan for administration is, again, focusing on the core services or core values of our city, to focus on employee professional development and customer service training, to work in collaboration with our Public Works Department for the next steps in Las Palmas project, to continue identifying funding sources that address the recommendations in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan that includes the expansion of walking and jogging trails and bike paths, and also focuses on the increase in programming by joint use agreements and collaborations. The proposed work plan in community services is to create and foster collaborative partnerships for social services that will increase the resources that we have to offer to our community. We will administer the second phase of our tech support program that will include workshops aimed at teenagers and adults. And this time around, we will have this. We will offer this at both locations, at Las Palmas Park and Recreation Park, and also to continue to explore partnerships that address our food security issues. There's a question at the end of this slide that I will address a little later, and I'll bring to council, which is the creation of a new after-school team program. Proposed work plan for recreation is to continue to collaborate and exchange resources with school district. This has to do a lot with the exchanging of informational resources. School district has very effective and wide tools that can connect the parents, their parents, to services and programs that our city offers, and we aim to collaborate with those, uh, to collaborate with the school district in order to have access to those. It also includes having school district representation at our citywide special events where they can offer their services to our community, and also having them invite us to their back to school nights and other school events where we can present our services uh, to, uh, to their target audience. In the area of recreation, the work plan also includes to access California Parks and Recreation Society trainings and to collaborate with affiliated partners. This includes the annual conference that next year I think it will take place in Sacramento, but it also includes the Region 14 mini conferences that take place closer to us. We plan to make this available to our part-time staff. And also in the area of recreation, we plan to expand opportunities for participation in youth and adult sports. We're going to try to focus on the areas of bringing back more activities for kids between the ages of 3 to 5, and also more opportunities for adult engagement in the areas of alternative sports. The proposed work plan for cultural arts and special events is to expand current programming options and partnerships through contract classes, provide our community with more options when it comes to their special interests, use our current programs and classes as talent for citywide special events, where we showcase the progress that our children and adults are making in their particular special interest classes, and have them participate in our citywide special events. And as you can see, the last area in this also has a question mark at the end that we wanted to bring in front of you for your direction. And the question is to make the San Fernando Valley Mile and the Dia de los Muertos celebration a separate special events. The proposed enhancements for our department is as follows in the area of administration, and again, keeping in mind the core values of our city. $3,000 for memberships and conference attendance at the California Parks and Recreation Society. Again, the annual conference and also the Region 14 mini conferences. $1,000 for professional development for senior forums. This has to do with our Las Palmas staff, sending one of our staff to the senior forums where they discuss the present issues affecting our senior community. So they'll be ready to answer those questions and to answer those needs when they're brought up by our seniors. In the area of community services, $3,000 for the Business Community Resource Center for the operations and operation supplies. Continuing with the proposed enhancements in the area of recreation, a heavy-duty ice machine for Las Palmas Park that will basically serve programs at Las Palmas and at Recreation Park. We have a lot of youth and adult sports, special events, the senior parties, and many other programs that could really benefit from this. In the area of special events, although our staff will continue with their fundraising efforts throughout the year in order to benefit all the special events that we put throughout the year, we're requesting a $50,000 gap funding for approved special events that will become effective when the fundraising efforts are not sufficient to put that special event together. In the area of performance measures for our administration division, we will continue the recreation scholarships program. We plan to increase city facility rentals and increase the number of programming hours at our city facilities. We plan to measure this by the number of residents receiving the recreation scholarships, number of facility rentals, of city facility rentals, and the number of hours of facility used by programs, services, and events. In our community services area, we plan to increase number of seniors served by our nutrition program, increase wellness and education collaborations, and increase social activities outreach. We will measure this by recording and taking a look at number of meals served through the daily nutrition program at Las Palmas Park, the number of workshops offered that have the emphasis of wellness and education, and the number of participants in social activities services. In the area of recreation, we plan to offer more options for youth engagement, increase leisure learning opportunities for all San Fernando residents. And we will measure this by the number of new youth and programs or activities, and also the number of new contract classes added to the already existing ones. In the area of cultural arts and special events, increase the number of events, increase visitation to the city's cultural destination. We plan to do this by the number of special events applications that are turned in to our department, and also by counting and keeping track of the number of visitors to Casa de Lopez Adobe. In order to continue our work plan and complete all that, this is the current organizational chart of our department. As you can see, this includes full-time staff and part-time staff. And the proposed organizational chart has actually no changes. I apologize because there are some two minor changes in here that are not illustrated here, but they have, we are not requesting for any additional staff or anything of that sort at this time. It's just a minor change. The social services coordinator, we're proposing that she reports directly to me. And also the title for our department supervisors was changed earlier from a recreation supervisor and a community services supervisor to just being recreation and community services supervisors, both of them. This was the two question marks that you saw earlier for discussion items in the areas of community services and special events. The first one being the after-school team program. We wanted to present this in front of council. We believe that as a department, it's time to bring back an after-school team program during the crucial times of 3 p.m. and 6 p.m., which is the time that the kids get out of school and parents are not home yet. We want the kids to be involved in a structured and a safe atmosphere. We planned, if approved, this program to have an education component that will include tutoring, after school homework help. It will include a volunteer component where we will encourage our teenagers to volunteer for community cleanups and to plan their own activities. And we'll also include a leadership component where eventually we will have our team program do reports to our commission on team programming happening throughout the city and the programs that they're putting together themselves. We believe that this program is crucial to our operations And I believe that this program was in existence until a couple of years ago. We strongly believe that it's time to bring it back. Again, to provide a safe educational and learning atmosphere for teenagers, most likely between the ages of 12 to 17 after school. The other question has to do with two special events that have been held in conjunction in the past, and that we believe it's time for them to become their own event. We've had great participation in the San Fernando Valley Mile. And of course, the Dia de los Muertos is always highly attended and a staple of the city. But we believe that separating these two events will allow us to make the San Fernando Valley Mile more like a health celebration, and we can bring a lot more components to it that will emphasize the health and wellness of our community. We believe that if we separate the two events, they'll receive great participation standing on their own. When it comes to cost, we don't foresee a big increase in cost, mainly because the San Fernando Valley Mile is heavily run by volunteers. And as mentioned earlier, the recommended $50,000 gap funding will cover any additional cost that this separation would incur. At this time, I'm ready to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
If I may, through the mayor, just before we get council feedback, if you can go back to the last slide, please, Julio. I just wanted to highlight that we did not the teen after school teen program. I mean, although supportive of it, I did not include it because it's it's a new program. So I wanted to make sure before including something like that in the budget, we got city council feedback on whether or not it would be whether this is something that you'd like to add as far as a work plan, and if so, it can either come out. There's $400,000 that's unallocated, so there's plenty to fund this this particular program. I just wanted to make sure that council was on board before kind of recommending a brand new program. So that was the reason that I asked Julio to kind of present to council today a little bit more on what that program would look like, what the goals are of it. Most of the costs are related to hiring additional rec leaders to run the program, and then a few costs. I believe this would be out of Recreation Park, is what the proposal is.
The proposed site is Recreation Park. Like Mr. Kimball said, the great majority of the cost would be in hiring 2 Recreation Leader 1s and 1 Recreation Leader 2. And I think we have some money in there for startup cost of the program.
So foosball table and something else. Yeah, so
The
that was the
essentials?
reason it
Yeah.
wasn't. That was the reason we didn't have it in the recommended budget.
Thank you. If you can clarify the gap funding of the $50,000, is this the park fund we established last year where there's kind of like a safety net? Should we need resources to fill any gaps?
So what we established last year was a little more related to kind of the capital projects. I remember we had like Lane Park and some of the other parks. It's the same idea, but it's more related specifically to events, because we didn't. I think what staff has been struggling with is planning the events with the uncertainty of co-sponsorships, and I'll give you a great example.
Well, the 1 mile run.
The
there
1
was
mile
a
run
gap.
is a great event,
Yeah.
and we ended up honestly we actually ended up getting the co-sponsorship, so we
Mhm.
didn't need that funding. But it
Mhm.
would be the same idea as that. It would be like that funding's there if we need it, so we don't have to at the last minute scramble and cut programming. We
Mhm.
can keep the programming consistent for the community, and just a lot of things have enhanced. Even this year, we approved it extra for the 4th of July, right? So
Mhm.
to go from a laser light show to a
Yeah.
drone show. So it's just to be able to facilitate continuing to have really excellent community events, especially because more people are going. And the more people that go, the more expensive they get because the more, amenities you need to have, the more services. So that's the idea between the kind of that gap fund.
Um, I wanted to also raise, there's a your org chart is almost kind of like perfectly symmetrical for all of the staff, with the exception of the part-time front desk at Recreation Park. I know last year there was an enhancement request to ensure that we had a consistent front desk person at Las Palmas when it really came down to customer service and ensuring that people knew programming and were able to answer questions throughout the week. And I imagine the same reasoning stands to ensure that there's consistent support for our community at Recreation Park. So I'd like to request that, following the presentations, when we consider our surplus budget, that we consider creating that full-time position, which was asked for in the enhancements. I do want to recognize that it is in there, and I think it would be really important to fulfill that request. Also, I had when I worked for the city many moons ago, we did have an after-school program, and it was wonderful, and it made an incredible impact in a lot of the youth in our community. And they all remember it still. I think my colleague can speak more to it. I think she was at Gridley or one of those schools. But I think especially when we think about kind of the activity in the community, and I know the police department can speak to it, but just like this obvious effort that teens are being recruited into doing things that we obviously don't want when it comes to graffiti or anything else, and creating that safe space to do homework and learn leadership skills. And I would even add, hopefully, because we'd be having teens who might be pursuing college one day, even having like those financial aid conversations. And there's so many nonprofits doing good work that I think, just like the social services coordinator, we can kind of bring them in to ensure that our community is getting access to those resources. For that reason, I'd also like if we can add that to our consideration following following all of the department presentations for the surplus budget, so that we can bring the after-school program back. With that, I'll go to council if there's any additional questions or comments.
Sure. So just to clarify, the part-time position that we said last year would be full-time is still part-time, or did I misunderstand? Oh, this is for a separate one, correct? So it's
So there, the one at Las Palmas Park
was
went to full-time,
exactly.
but the one at Recreation Park
That
didn't.
one's
So
still
it's the one
part-time.
imbalance
Yeah,
you'll see on page 219.
got it.
Um,
Mm-hmm. And then that enhancement was about 32,000, right? Yeah, that's the number that sticks out. Maybe I'm wrong. Um, with regards to the $50,000 surplus fund for events, I understand the use of it, but is it potential, or is it possible that we simply aren't planning them out, I guess, far enough in advance or thoroughly enough, and that's why we have these shortages? I just worry about this being an ever increasing cost. It's 50,000 this year, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000. So I just want to make sure that there's not something structural that we're doing incorrectly.
The fundraising efforts by our special events staff are year-round. And actually, we've been working very close together with Kadika in order to put together a kind of like a sponsorship packet where we give businesses the opportunity to just get all the information at once. I think that would make a whole lot of difference if you go to them just one time, offering all the opportunities that are going to be coming to them throughout the year, than having to go back to them every time we have a special event. So the efforts are ongoing throughout the year. Again, I think that the major focus is, like Mr. Kimball mentioned earlier, is just for our staff to continue their work and then and focus on the quality of the program and the activities and everything that is going to be offered to the community, instead of worrying about whether the fundraising efforts are going to come through or not. We've been very fortunate that our business community has answered well, but again, just the fundraising efforts are year round.
Got it.
And if I may, I would just add that the plan, like I know they're already planning they're really just waiting for council to give direction on whether or not the mile run and the Dia de los Muertos are the same day. Like Recreation does a really good job of planning them early. what ends up happening, what the costs that become the significant costs are stage rentals, which go up pretty significantly every year. Traffic control is usually what is the biggest, and because of all of the liability associated with traffic control, those costs tend to go up more than CPI. So we've, in fact, they've even over the last few years, they used to go out, the recreation used to go out and at every event get like the stage cost, right? But they found that like as they did that, it would go up every time they had an event. So they actually now do an RFP at the beginning of the year to like lock in prices for the year. So there's a lot of things. They're doing a lot to try to keep costs down. It's just the event planning is going up. And I would also mention, I think the stress is that, like Julio said, or Mr. Salcedo said, our businesses a lot of times do end up coming through, but sometimes they might not come through until a week before the event.
Got it.
So it's like we can't wait until that week before the event to order a jumper or to get a bigger stage or to get like, to say, oh, I'm actually going to pay a professional band as opposed to having, someone else, an amateur band. So those are the things like at least we can continue planning. And when that does come in, a lot of businesses just end up, they're not working on our timeline. They're working on their own timeline and they're giving us money. So we can't say, well,
So is it more of like a revolving account then, or do you plan that it won't be resupplied?
So I think that would be a thing that we could certainly explore with council if maybe there's sort of a one-time kind of funding, and then at the end of each year we could review. I mean, we can even come back, and maybe that's a good idea. Is we can come back with the fund that was approved by council as part of, I think it was ARPA funds, right? Last time we can say last year, we can say how much of that we actually spent and what's left. And then we can have that report every year. So something that it's like, again, we don't want, I also, that was my hesitation when I talked with Julio, like, I don't want us to just fall back on, oh, we don't have to do anything now because we have money. But I also don't want to hinder our planning because we have to wait until the last minute before a co-sponsorship comes in. So we're trying to figure out a way to, and that might be a good interim solution is we could provide information on how much was used in the prior year. And
Right, and then if we have to cut back, or if we just have to simply put more up front.
Right, yeah.
And have it as a policy. Yeah, my only concern is about that number growing. I do like the idea of having a full-time person at Recreation Park. I think that that's helpful. One of the things that Councilmember Solorio brought up a couple times, and I don't know if she's going to bring it up this time, is wanting to bring back the Christmas parade that the city used to have. What was it, like 15 years ago? Something like that. Maybe longer, maybe 20 years ago. Do you have any, were you going to bring that up today? Or, yeah, sorry, but I will refrain from asking any questions then. I'll let her ask. But I had questions on it because I'm going to have to leave soon. So strike that from the record. Although I think for our tree lighting ceremony, this is not a big deal at all. I would personally like to call it a, Christmas tree ceremony. I like the idea of Christmas in there, and I know that there might be some legal concerns, but the White House has, a yearly event that's called Christmas. I don't know. I just feel like Christmas is such a commonly celebrated event that there isn't any harm in calling it a, Christmas tree ceremony. But that's more of a side note. With regards to separating the San Fernando Valley 1 mile with Dia de los Muertos, I'm open to it. Thematically, they have nothing in common at all. It doesn't make any sense, but the reason that staff was insistent, it was something about sometimes them, or like the only weeks that they had available, they would coincide. Part of it was limited staffing, but there were some logistical things in there. I just wish that I could remember what it was. But if you feel that it's going to go seamlessly, I think that 1 year it might have rained, so it had to be switched anyway, so it made sense to have it at the same time. If you think that it's better off having it as 2 separate events and it's not going to cost that much more, I'm fine with it. But maybe we should just search a little bit deeper in terms of understanding all the rationale why they combined it. Let me see what else we have on here. So one of the things that we had at our last budget was discussion of the outreach for Cindy's Park. I don't think it was called that. No, it wasn't called that at the time, obviously. But we said that we had funding for it. And when I kept insisting on Pacoima Beautiful, I know staff said we have this new outreach consultant who's coming on, and it would be great for them to do it. And I recall saying that I don't care if they do it or Pacoima Beautiful does it as long as it gets done. But having community outreach for that park was already discussed and approved procedurally, but it never happened. So I know that we have Las Palmas on here, the Las Palmas revitalization was on here, but nothing was mentioned about that park, nor about the sign that we said.
So with regards to outreach, outreach hasn't happened for that park yet because we have not begun the revitalization piece.
Mhm.
So, or even like the planning for that. We have to finish, what we're waiting for is finishing the bike path because the bike path is what's gonna connect that park. And then phase 2 of that is then revitalizing Cindy Montanez Natural Park and extending the bike path up to Foothill through the park. So the outreach portion of that will start once we're ready to kick off phase 2. We just haven't been ready to kick off phase 2 yet.
So when will this happen? Because residents in that neighborhood are extremely frustrated by by the upkeep or lack thereof of the park. And they've wanted to be able to air those concerns. And while I understand that this might fit in a little bit more nicely with some of the other plans that we have in mind, I feel that progress in general often gets delayed because we tried a bunch too many things together, in the name of efficiency, like leaving certain sidewalks in disrepair for, a generation because we're waiting for the funds, for example, to redo the streets and to redo the sewer line simultaneously. So what's the soonest that that phase will actually materialize? And do you see any downside for us to having a small outreach earlier to those handful of blocks so community members can voice their frustrations?
So I think they're two. They might be two separate efforts. We were looking at probably the fall when we start the revitalization piece of that park. Which on that particular effort, we would be asking community members and users like what amenities they'd like to see there, those types of things. If there are folks that have concerns, particularly about the maintenance of the park or things, then that's typically a really good opportunity to have a special neighborhood watch in that area where, folks from that, we could host it in the park, we could host it at someone's house, but folks from that area could come in and provide their concerns through a neighborhood watch. Tends to be a good forum for that piece of it. But related specifically to like the capital project, that's probably going to kick off around fall because again, we need to finish just from a staff capacity standpoint. I mean, we need the project manager to finish the bike path, the Pacoima Wash bike path before she has the capacity to move on to a next project.
So how much money do you think it would cost to actually advertise a neighborhood watch meeting? Obviously, not to the whole city. Sure, we can put it on social media, but like specifically mailing it to the 500 closest homes to that park, like maybe like a door drop and a piece of mail. So
Yeah, that's less than $1,000. I mean, that we can do relatively easily. I don't even know that it would necessarily need to be an enhancement. We could probably do it under the police department's existing budget. If council wants us to do a special neighborhood watch, we could divert some of those funds because we have them at City Hall, but we also like to have them in certain neighborhoods when they request. A good example is for the Halloween night over in Orange Grove. We had a special neighborhood watch over in that area. It was very successful because they had a very specific concern. So I think if there's a neighborhood with a specific concern, the chief would love to host a neighborhood watch in that area. And I don't think we could. Again, that just takes direction from council, and we can set that up.
Because before we do any major enhancements, it would be helpful to get feedback and just take care of immediate stuff. I mean, there's recurring graffiti at that park. Supposedly, there's occasionally people who sleep there at night, despite the fact that it's gated. There's large amounts of trash, as we saw from our recent cleanups, and people feel that it has been more of a detriment than an actual benefit to the community. And obviously, I want those sentiments reversed as much as we can muster. And then we also mentioned a better sign for the property, and I was wondering if there was any progress on that.
Yeah, so we are Public Works isn't here tonight, but we'll provide an update on that. I know we were looking at more of a copper sign, more permanent sign with like a
Yeah.
silhouette. So I believe they started to look into it. So and we have budget for it already. So we're working on it.
Great. And then lastly, with regards to the teen programming, I'm certainly open to it. I guess one of the concerns I have is that I'd want to understand more of what LAUSD offers, or I guess other schools in the area. Not everyone goes to LAUSD, but what the schools in the area offer, and if we are duplicating any efforts that are already there. Um, I'm barely learning about the machinations of how kindergarten works, trying to learn all the ins and outs. It's really complicated. It sounds like it's easy, like you just go and apply. It's a whole set of rules. They have like a 41-page enrollment booklet that you can read. I think I read through like 2 pages. It is so complex how this system works. And so it would be helpful to know to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. I love the idea of helping our youth more as we have through various different programs, but I also recognize that school districts, especially like LAUSD, have a gargantuan budget. I thought it was like $1 billion. I think it was like 18 billion or something. It's unbelievable how big it is. And so I worry about us shouldering too high of a cost that goes beyond our means. And obviously we have a surplus this year, but not to sound repetitive, but we have an enormous number of sidewalks that still need to be done, an enormous number of streets that still need to be done, and a massive unfunded liability in the tens of millions of dollars for our retirees' healthcare cost. So I worry about eating into funds that are designed to make the city more solvent and more livable. I'm certainly open to it, but I think it would be helpful if it comes back on that list that we had in our last budget, where we all kind of figured out which of the items had 3 votes or 2 votes, or instead of like deciding today. I think it'd be helpful to come back on that list. So those are my thoughts, and I didn't say anything about the Christmas parade. So
Councilmember Solorio.
On that note, I'll jump in. So I'm definitely very supportive of like the teen program. I think when we're talking about after school, it was definitely more than a few years ago. It was like 16 years ago when I used to work it before it got closed down. And it was a wonderful, I think, um, it was great for the community to be able to drop off their kids and have them at the school sites. I think I second some of what Councilmember Fajardo was saying, where there is LAUSD programs that are already doing this. I specifically remember when when the program was shut down, I actually got hired with LAUSD and moved over and then worked at the same school. So I was at San Fernando Elementary and then didn't have the position here, went to Parks and Rec, and then got hired through LAUSD for basically the same programming. But I am wondering, because this is more aligned for teens, right, 12 to 17, if LAUSD does have anything available. But on that note, I also have a question. Will it be provided to the community for free, or will there be, you know, will they have to pay? Will there be fees associated with it?
Our intent is to provide it for free.
Okay.
The target audience that we would love to have are not the kids that are, of course, everyone's welcome,
Yeah.
but the target audience are those kids that are kind of like on the fence of, am I going to go hang out with these guys in the corner,
Yeah.
or am I going to go home? We want to be that place in the middle where they come to a safe place and they get to find out about their place in our community. And we plan to teach that by volunteer work, by leadership component, by providing them great examples through our staff of people that are working and that are making a difference in their community. So that's what we want to be.
I really like that, because I also acknowledge that not only do we have like San Fernando Middle School and Cesar Chavez, the high school, but we also have other schools here that are somewhat like continuation schools in San Fernando. I don't know if any of you are familiar, but there's Assurance Learning on Brand that is like a continuation school that I think that can really benefit from a program like this, with some of those at-risk kiddos that can need the support. So maybe even reaching out to them when this program is established. Um, in regards to, I guess I had a question in regards to the fifth. I want to say that it was 50,000 for gap funding. What are the current barriers that we're facing? I know you said that we work on it throughout the year, but is there anyone currently assigned to getting co-sponsorships, or who was the person doing it these last few years that maybe um, I guess the city can assign to a staff member? I'm just wondering, how do we fix the current barriers so that we're not dipping into gap funding and having to increase that year by year?
The current people assigned to fundraising for our special events are the same people that are organizing the special events. So they have to worry about the fundraising portion of the event and also the contracts for the event, the entertainment,
Yeah.
staffing, schedules, and all that. That's why, as Mr. Kimball mentioned earlier, sometimes the funding doesn't come like after, like a week before the event, and by that time everything's set, everything's organized, and of course their their focus is on making the program happen. The gap funding is like a security blanket where we know it's going to happen, whether those whether those businesses answer in the positive or in the negative.
Yeah, and I think I'm also wondering, like, instead of maybe doing like an ongoing, maybe for this year, but not for future years, right? Like a gap funding, creating a position in which someone would do grant writing or sponsorships and have that be available. And I know if it's year round, I'm wondering, would that be a part-time or a full-time position? I know Mayor Rodriguez used to do some of the grant writing here for the city, or helping out at least in the parks and recreation. If I don't want to say more than what actually used to happen, but I remember that she used to do that for Parks and Recreation. So I'm wondering, for many years, I imagine that it goes from one person to another person, and we're all trying to really help out. But if this is a continuous effort that we need every single year, why not create a position to be able to use that versus utilizing gap funding, right? And having that ever change. Is that something that's a possibility, or that we're even looking towards?
Um, so it's certainly a possibility. I would just note that we tend to, a staff. Well, if it's part time, then it's a little bit more seasonal. So we tend to try to come before we add staff positions, because once you add a position, it's hard to take it away,
Yeah.
because then there's someone in that position, and when you don't need it, it's hard to scale, right? So, but we could certainly do that. I think one of the things in what we're exploring, what recreation is exploring, particularly with Kanika, is completely looking at how we do things differently. Because, for example, now we're calling Providence Holy Cross, or the printing place, for every single event on their own, right? As opposed, so they kind of get sick of you calling them, and they stop answering your call.
Yeah.
So what they're looking at is like, how can we do one sponsorship package for the year, and that package includes these 6 events, and you're going to be a title if you give $15,000. So instead of asking them for every single event, it's like a sponsorship package. If we can do something like that and we get better than that, then tends to be like the sponsorship activity can be like a month or two, like drive, and then you can kind of get your funding for the year, as opposed to having to like doing it on a event by event basis, which is sort of how we've been doing it over the last number of years. So I think that's another thing I would ask, is like, let us try to figure that out this year, and how that co-sponsorship package can be more attractive, and be so that we're just asking once and just getting a higher level of sponsorship, um, and then have that funding kind of available, for the year. And one of the things I was going to recommend, and obviously, I don't want to and council do anything that you're not comfortable with. So what we will come back at either our next meeting or one of our next budget meetings, is a analysis of the current kind of park gap funding or the fund that was put out there, how much was put out, what was used, and maybe the alternative is we look at just carrying over what hasn't been used for that, so we can provide that at the next budget study session as well.
Yeah, and if I can offer, or after your comments, I have a
Go ahead. I was gonna add more.
just that as a reminder, right? So the enhancements that are before us, both funded and not funded, and the surplus that has that's been left, the 400,000, all of that is under consideration. So nothing that has gone through kind of this first level of review and recommendation by the city manager is necessarily automatically built into the budget. So I just want to raise that the questions about this 50,000, I do think it's really helpful to bring that up because now you'll come back and tell us what else can happen. I think when we had created the park fund, there was a thought, especially with the 1 mile run, that should the fundraising not come through, but the event still continue, it could lean on the fund, but still replenish it because it was also an opportunity to address some of the things. I remember Vice Mayor Mendoza, there was like a slide that you wanted addressed. So like there's those little pieces of parks that sometimes there's not funding. We want to make sure it's available. So I appreciate that you're going to come back and bring that fund. I just wanted to take this opportunity to reiterate that nothing here in the enhancements is automatic. It's all under consideration.
Thank you. And then lastly, I just wanted to talk about the separating of the events of the Mayo Run and the Dia de los Muertos. I think I could become supportive of it. I'm wondering if you can come back and just provide what would the cost be to separating those, and also I guess the dates. And I ask about the dates just because I know towards the end of the year we get really busy with a bunch of events around the same time frame, and so just separating that means that we would have to add another date. So I'm wondering, will the Mayo Run be at the beginning of the year, right? And if so, if they were separated, would the Dia de los Muertos event, could that be, you know, a parade, which is like a Halloween parade? And I say Halloween to Dia de los Muertos because we have such a big population here in San Fernando that celebrates Halloween and is very enthusiastic about it. And so I'm wondering if instead of a Christmas parade that most cities do at the end of the year. I don't know if they all call it a Christmas parade, but they have a parade towards the end of the year that highlights Christmas and other things. But could it be like a Halloween / Dia de los Muertos parade where we can highlight that, where our community specifically is really focused on that, right? So that might be cool. So I'm wondering just about budget and how much it would cost, and then on dates for that. And those are all my comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you. In regard to splitting the two events, I would be in favor of that. So I did the mile run 2 years ago, I think, and I don't remember if that was I don't know if they had done it before or it was the time they came back, but it felt like they were getting the hang of it because a lot of people who had registered online had to wait a really long line, and had like even an hour later until they could start running. So with that, there were so many people that attended 2 years ago, and with that, like a lot later start times. When I was done running, and then I had to like walk all the way back because I live on the other side, and then I changed, took a shower and changed. I did miss like the folklorico from the other event. So, and then it's like, I don't know, you can go in your running clothes, but if you don't want to. So I do see them as two separate events, and running events can be really fun and like a big event in themselves. And I'm actually in agreement. It was almost like an extra event at the end of the last quarter of the year when it's very busy. So I know March is like a very popular, I think the LA Marathon is done in March, April. I think we don't do as much like January to June. So that would be an option. I would be in support of that. For the after-school teen program, one of my concerns is that age range, 12 to 17, seems like very different. A 12-year-old who's just coming out of 5th grade and a 17-year-old who's about to go to college. I know that schools like usually separate. You have middle school and high school. So that's one way to think of it. And then, had anybody in the community asked for the teen program, or how did that get on your radar?
One of the core services that every recreation and community services department has is after-school recreation or after-school teen recreation. Um, Not only that, but there has been some developments that I'm sure the chief has noticed in our community where we see a lot of kids at our parks that are just not involved in structure activity. We have seen and we have heard of incidents at very near our parks, uh, and we actually experienced a pretty scary event of a shooting at our recreation park. Um, a lot of those things led us to believe that we need somewhere safe, somewhere um, engaging, somewhere fun where kids have that option to attend. Not only for them to be able to take advantage of those recreational, social, cultural, education opportunities, but because it's a program like that, you develop a relationship with the participants. The staff develops a relationship. They get to serve as role models. I always tell my staff that are going to be put in charge of team programs and kid programs, be ready because you're going to be a role model whether you like it or not. Um, we hope that it's going to lead for kids to feel safe, to build a trusting relationship, where they if they're facing those hard decisions in their upbringing in their growing up, um, that they're going to choose the right path, that they're going to have someone to talk to. We plan to have the resources we have available in our community involved in this program. And by those resources, I mean the school district, our chief, our police department, our other city departments, where we find ways of using them to educate our kids or to have, a field trips to our public works yard or our police department, or maybe have our city manager lead another city hall tour. Again, just providing an option to those kids where there would be no option, if it wasn't for that program. And as far as the age range, usually the kids do get separated into age groups, and we provide age-appropriate activities.
And if I may, Mayor, oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add one little, because you asked about the origin of the idea. So, Julio also brought it to me, but also the chief has heard some feedback, particularly at the Parent Academy at the middle school, about at San Fernando Middle School, about those parents having an interest in there being more activities for their children. Particularly, again, I think San Fernando Middle School is sort of the target audience. They're sort of that age where I think a lot of kids are trying to find themselves. They're susceptible to, you know, influence. And then also, it's right. It's an easy walk from the middle school to Recreation Park if that's approved by City Council. So I just did want to say it also has come up in some of the chiefs' parent academies as well.
Okay, so to clarify, your department saw a need and so proposed this, and then the chief and the parent academies heard that they wish there were more activities, not necessarily this program though. Is this program like a mandatory, you have to be there for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week? Is it come and go, or?
No, it's what is called a drop-in program. So what we do is we make sure that the parents know exactly what the program is all about. Of course, the parents have to provide permission, and earlier when I referenced and using all of our resources in the community to make this program the best possible, I also meant the parents. The parents have to be heavily involved. Whatever activity we do, a lot of those activities, the parents are invited to it. It's only going to work if we're all involved in it. At the beginning, I'm thinking of a triangular approach between our law enforcement community, the parents, and us, and just making sure that the kids are getting that support system from all those three directions.
So I would be just interested, I don't know if there's any way, and I don't even know if this will make it to the next round, but like maybe putting out feelers to see how many parents would actually want to sign their kids up. I would be interested in hearing about that. Because I don't want to put my personal experience, but I know sometimes when you're a teenager, you're more free. So I know there's a great need when you're young, you need someone to watch them. But when you're a teenager, you can stay home, or maybe you're watching younger siblings for the family, or you like to watch TV. And I'm just wondering if the same kids that might be veering a certain direction would be like willing to participate in this program. I don't know any of those background facts. I don't know if we've had any outreach. I guess there is a parent academy where we could get a lot of information from. But thank you for your heart for the kids in our community. I think I have some general comments for the end, but in regards to these items, I guess if we want to do more outdoor movies, is that in this section? I went to one, I think it was a couple years ago too, and it was like you kind of had to put your blanket on the dirt. So how are we accounting for that? It was kind of sad. How are we accounting for that? Like where it is and that it's comfortable to do that? Is that more money needed for that, or is that just maintenance of the grass, or where we're choosing to set up the screen?
What I can tell you is that this year around we're placing heavy emphasis on making sure that that we use like our newly renovated facilities, right? That we give that exposure to the great work that Public Works and engineering and all the city departments are doing. So it's good. This year around, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on those. So yeah, we don't anticipate that people putting their things on dirt.
Great. And then just to clarify, so as far as the teen program or any ideas that council may have, that's coming out of that $400,000, right?
Yeah, that because it's not included. Well, and actually to the mayor's point, the way that Erica proposed the baseline expenditures doesn't have any of it's 26.7 is the baseline expenditures. That doesn't have any of the 900,000 in staff recommended enhancements. And then above that, there's an additional 400,000. Yeah, so if it's so this isn't this 62,000 isn't right now included in those enhancements. So it would come out of the 400, or if there were if council didn't want to do the 50,000 for the gap funding, right, that could go toward the teen program. So yeah.
So it's really us. I mean, we could have like tons of ideas for programs and we're choosing which one.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have been developing a process to figuring this out. And so at the end, we do get to kind of rank it together so that we can collectively come up with like how we're going to spend the full amount. We're now going to take a short break before the vice mayor. We continue with comments. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to start by saying that Parks and Recreation brings a lot of happiness and structure to our community. It's a vital component to what we do in our city. So, given that, how does staff feel about the separating of the event? Because they're the ones that actually work it, so I like to know how they feel about it.
Actually, the idea started from the staff that actually run the events. They saw the participation of the event. They saw everything that entails in putting the event together, the collaborations that each of the events creates, and that was where the idea started with the line staff.
Okay. Um, and then on the $50,000 gap funding, um, if that is, if we approve that item, that line item, would you force yourself to spend the 50,000? No, it would just, you would have it completely delineate that it's just going to be for,
Yeah, the
a
idea
gap
would be to not spend it.
okay.
is
All
what
right.
staff
And then if it's not spent, it will go back into the budget for us to discuss further. Okay, that's good. Um, And then that full-time rec position, I think it has made a difference. There's I've seen a greater improvement in more um, accurate information that's being disseminated from that. So I think that, as the mayor mentioned, doing also increasing the one at Rec Park would be good as well. Because they offer the same similar services, and you're doing something else over there, aren't they? Didn't you add something that you're doing from at Las Palmas that you're doing over there? Something that you just moved over there? No? I don't know what it was.
We are hosting a couple of programs Las Palmas is a very busy place.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when they have no room available, we host those events or those programs over at Recreation Park.
You guys are doing such a great job. It's amazing. And then the ice making machine, seniors are going to be really happy. They've been asking for that for several years, pretty much since I got on the council. So that's a really good, because that way they don't, when they have their dances or events, they don't need to go out and carry the big bags of ice and bring them in. They used to do that. Now staff may do it. I'm not sure what the process is, but it was quite a chore. The teen program is something that is of great interest to me. I think it's important for us to provide a safe place for our teens. And, I see it as an extension of the Parent Academy that the chief is doing. And I think he's already had some feedback from the parents wanting something for their children. Some, additional outreach in terms of whether it's something that's wanted. I think, um, the parents that he's spoken with that have requested something like that should be something that's maybe sufficient. I think it's something that we should definitely try, because we don't know what it's going to be like, right? Is it going to be full, um, well attended by the teens, and will the parents, support it as well? So, I think something that we should definitely try. And as Councilmember Garcia mentioned, because of the, you're having like from 12 to 17 or 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds.
12 to 17 is the plan right now. We're still in we're waiting for council's direction, and I'm sure once we get the word, if it's approved, we'll go on full mode planning. But right now, we're looking at the ages of 12 to 17. We're open to other suggestions.
What grade is our 12-year-olds?
Those would be, we're targeting around 6th, 7th grade, all the way to high school.
Okay, 6 and 7. Because, ever since LA Unified changed their structure and had the 6th graders go to the middle school, I was never really comfortable with that. with that, I just felt, I think that they're too young to be with the middle school kids. So it's something that I think that we should definitely look at to see, having them at even maybe different parks, one at Rec Park and another group at Red Park, and one at Las Palmas, or wherever, whatever it is that you decide, or something structured where they can be good together, because, their minds are at different levels, and we don't want to, I don't think we want to mix that a little too much. For me, anyway, that's how I feel about our children. We need to keep them as innocent as we can, well, when they're small and young. Okay, so I got that. Having them do their homework while they're there and offering it free. I especially like that idea for that, for our children to be able to come. Let me see, what is this? I think that's good. I think that's all I have. That was all you had, right? Anything else that I missed? I'm missing. Okay, I'm good. Oh, and then, the slide. The slide that is that still not been replaced, Mr. Kimball? Or I don't know if you're aware of that slide.
No, I know at Recreation Park.
Yeah.
I'll have to look. I know they were working on it, and there was something with a pole and they had a few different solutions. I don't
Mhm.
know if they've completed it or not, so we'll look into, we'll get that information back to you on the slide.
Okay. And how about park safety? Is this part of it, or when we go to the PD? Mr. Kim?
It would probably be PD, yeah.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Going off of a couple of the comments, when you bring back the park fund from 23-24, and the status of the slide, I just also wanted to ask about kind of the locking mechanisms in the restrooms for Recreation Park and the outside restrooms by the field. I think some of these things might not even be necessary to dip into the fund. And maybe maintenance already has kind of the locking mechanisms they could put in. But I do, kind of to the question about like which department do we ask questions for, it's one of those moments where like collaboration is so key. And I wouldn't know that those locking mechanisms weren't there unless I was just at the Cesar Chavez cleanup. And of course, since there's no restrooms at the monument, we had to like go all the way down to those outside restrooms, but you couldn't use them because they couldn't actually close. And there was like no soap dispenser. And so just kind of recognizing that our recreation leaders are the ones there all the time, but they're not necessarily looking out for maintenance items, but maintenance might not be in the restrooms all the time, or I'm not sure where the crossover happens. And I just raised that because obviously with the Vice Mayor's comment about kind of police and safety, there's also just kind of just the basic kind of making sure those things are there. So when you bring back the park fund, if we could have that conversation. And also because Councilman Fajardo raised Cindy Montañez's Natural Park and safety issues. And I know Commissioner Patty Lopez, Vice Mayor's commissioner, has concerns about Rudy Ortega Park, which I imagine is what you're referencing. You had commented that, these special neighborhood watch moments could happen within existing work plans without additional funding. So you let us know when we can have that conversation so that our parks are being supported with that and you have the proper, direction from staff, since it kind of came up with two different locations today. So we'll wait for your guidance when we go over the park fund at the next meeting.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, and I think those are the locking mechanisms. Those are also adequate, good things to raise when we talk about. Be talking about the facilities budget and public works, because I think it would be good. It will be good for council to staff to let council know how those items come up, how they're requested by staff, the work orders, how they're completed. So
yeah, Vice Mayor.
I'm sorry, I had one more item, because we had the dance on Saturday and the elevator's not working. So it happens a couple of times a year where it's not working, and I'm wondering, does it need to be replaced, or Does it need just a really good overhaul to be functional throughout the year, more functional?
From what we've found, those there are no parts to fix that elevator.
Oh,
So what we're working with actually our finance department is to come up with the money to completely replace it. Um, there there has already been some calls to companies to give us an estimate on how much it would cost, and we're pulling money together from other projects that came in under cost or that was allocated for something else, but that this is a more present issue. There was some funding that was allocated for the maintenance of the elevator. It's just not going to be enough to replace it. So we're looking for the other funds that where we're going to be able to completely replace it. But we're currently working on that. Yes.
okay, if it isn't enough, then maybe it can be, we can add additional funds from our budget if it's needed, right?
Yeah, and so
My
I think
current
those are
restrictions.
examples. So obviously, as Erica mentioned at the beginning of this, although the budget is in ink, it's not permanent ink. It is a living document throughout the year, so things will come up, right? And I think from a staff perspective, we're always trying to figure out how to fund something not using general fund dollars. We want to really protect those before we would move forward on anything like we're not just gonna on our own reallocate things from if there were savings in other CIPs, we would bring that forward to city council. It may not be done because they do need to get quotes and understand. I think we don't know, does that mean it's $10,000 or $60,000, right? Because there's electrical, there's a whole bunch of things that we have to figure that out first, see if there's an opportunity to fund it not using gap funding, and then we can come back to council. That'll probably be a separate standalone item, unless we get the
Not just
information.
fund it here through this budget process and say, okay, we need 60,000.
Because I don't know. That's the issue. We don't know what we need unless we know in the next 2 weeks.
That would be good.
Might not be likely. Because what I don't want to do is say it's going to be $50,000, and then we go forward with the project and realize, oh, that's just for the elevator. Then we need to actually completely redo all of the wiring. We need to put in a whole new circuit breaker for there's a whole and then it's actually $160,000. So I don't want to have to come back 2 or 3 times to council, because I don't think that you would want to talk about it multiple times. You'd be, why didn't you do your homework and come to us once, right? So we want to make sure we do our homework and not just throw a number against the wall that we don't know if that's adequate or not.
If I can offer alternatively, though, if we as a council want to prioritize that at our senior center that needs accessibility, then this is an opportunity for us to at least earmark something to move it forward. And I also would ask, in addition to the companies you reached out to, if we can look into like what would a ramp cost us, so there would be no electrical concerns, but really just another, and hopefully no concerns in the future either of breaking. And instead, maybe we can make it like a capital improvement.
Yeah, we can certainly look at other potential alternatives to an elevator or other access points.
And then Vice Mayor, did you have any other?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Vice Mayor raising the elevator issue, reminds me again, and this has come up over the years repeatedly. Is there is a driveway in the right of way when you're walking at Las Palmas Park. An elderly person cannot walk, like roll through. And so I've been with elderly folk, they have to step into the dirt and go up towards the tables because it's not ADA accessible, which is also, I would argue, like a liability and a legal issue. And consistently it's pushed off as something that will come out of a different fund later, but it's a problem now and from years past that hasn't been addressed. So I know we're talking about parks, but this is obviously raising public safety and public works issues. If when we talk about public works, we can talk about fixing that specific sidewalk and not as part of like the sidewalk master plan, which we all want and is like amazingly funded through this budget, but just to ensure that, again, it's accessible since it is our senior center for the city.
Yeah. And we can get more, I can get a detail on the exact dip too, so I can make sure we're ready for that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know, if, just some general comments that I don't know fall in this department, but that I was reminded of so that maybe we can have some more information for the next meeting. Well, one thing I was thinking, just returning to the essentials, is I was at Commissioner Patty Lopez's event. I co-hosted with her, and the bathrooms at Rudy Ortega Park are not great. Like the mirror, you can't even see yourself in it. So I was just thinking, I mean, how about all our public bathrooms are really nice and clean and functioning? And I think that's an essential. And it makes you want to have your party at the park and feel comfortable going to the bathroom. And I think it's a safety issue too. And then also as far, and I think this is going into the public works, so I apologize for that, but when there's graffiti, we clean it, but it's like patches. You can tell it was painted over. It's like a rectangle. And do we not have the color paint, or can we just paint the whole thing so it doesn't look like it was vandalized? I think also our signs, the yellow signs that give directions to different areas in the city, are literally peeling, and they've been like that for 2 years. So I don't know if that's part of our budget to fix them, but it's been a couple years. And then there's crosswalks where the lines are gone, and there's street signs where you can't read them. So again, I don't know if that's, because sometimes we'll say signs, I don't know what's covered by that, but if we could have some more information about that. And then finally, I would just say I would be really interested in what we could, how much of our sidewalks, like could we fix all of our sidewalks if we used a big chunk of that $400,000? Knowing that the tree issue is going to come up, we don't want to cut down trees, so we're going to have to be creative, because it's not just cut down trees to fix sidewalks, and it's not just leave sidewalks to keep trees. What can be done? I would be interested in hearing that at the next meeting.
All right. Any closing remarks?
Oh, if I know, Mayor, did you have additional comments on any of the park budget?
No, I provided mine. It was specifically about the part-time to full-time. And then the one other comment I had was just about, the 1 mile run is an event that was intended to be in partnership with CSUN. And really, when it was approved by the council, it was with the understanding that it would be through raised funds through partnerships. So I think that separating the events, if that's what's recommended from staff, I can be supportive, but I think it's important that when we talk about kind of this gap funding, which I know we'll discuss further, we remember that, the original request was to be a partner in the 1 mile run, not to fully fund it. And so I don't want us to forget that that was the intention, to bring in partners. Because also El Grito was something that Cindy Montañez wanted to happen every year, and that's not here.
Right.
And so if we'd be allocating $50,000 for an event that was committed to be fundraised for versus one that was like requested from the community. So I just want to make sure we have that background when we talk about the fund.
Thank you. So I'm just going to go over, just repeat some of the follow-ups that we have to make sure that we don't miss anything, and we can have it in one of the future budget study sessions. So one of the pieces of information from earlier tonight that was requested is sort of our current vacancy rate and what vacancies we currently have. So we'll get that information together and provide it. Bring back, in a follow-up item over the summer about the postcard, commercial property and code enforcement property and the commercial code enforcement priorities, a possible postcard education effort. So we'll bring that back as a separate item over the summer as we start to implement that program, get priorities for council's consideration. Um, Consideration of the full-time position at Rec Park for customer service purposes. There was a lot of support for the after-school team program. However, there was follow-up on, we do have some follow-up on what does LAUSD currently offer to make sure we're not duplicating their efforts. What are costs for, sorry. So what does LAUSD currently offer? And then we wanted to provide we'll provide info on the current park gap funding fund and how that's been used so far and what's available still. A little bit of rationale on why the 5K and Dia de los Muertos were actually combined in the first place, to make sure we're not undoing something that was separated for a reason, as well as the cost for separating it and the potential dates that we would have those both of those events. We'll provide an update on better signage at Cindy, on the status of the better signage at Cindy Montanez Natural Park, as well as outreach plan for revitalizing that park and just for park for that neighborhood in general. A cost for we'll put out a cost for a parade, because there was a Christmas parade and a Halloween parade, both sort of mentioned tonight, but so we'll at least get a cost together on what a parade in general would tends to cost. How many, and then we'll try to get how many parents or kids would actually be interested in the after school team program. We'll get status on the slide at Recreation Park. And then we'll provide, we'll make sure that we provide the process for fixing facilities, how they're reported, and how we fix those facilities. We'll put together, again, this is another information request, on professional development citywide, and just sort of how that's distributed between each department and how that's used by sort of managers and supervisors. All of the items, Councilmember Garcia, that you mentioned about bathrooms, signage, crosswalks, street signs, so some of the bathrooms, like a lot of those upgrades, we have a lot of old facilities, right? So it just takes money. We have 400,000, we have $1 million. Do we put it towards sidewalks? Do we put it toward facilities? Because I think our needs are exceeding that. But Public Works will be providing an update on the facility. That's why we are doing this facility kind of deferred maintenance plan, so that we know what a cost would be and how much it would be to upgrade the bathrooms at all the facilities, how much it would be to do the HVAC at all the facilities. So that will all be, we'll make sure that we address all of those through the Public Works project coming, or presentation coming up. And then the sidewalk dip at Las Palmas, we'll see what, again, we can kind of put that on the sidewalk plan, which we're doing now. I believe I think I got most of it.
It was just, I don't know if we needed to decide anything on the package for the sponsors of the various events that we have. I think that's a great idea, because, the various entities that support those events, they usually know which ones they participate in or which ones they want to. So I think it's a great idea. So I really, I like that.
I think with that, we are done with item 1 as the admin reports.
All right, staff communication and updates.
I was just going to recap in terms of the remaining portion of our budget study session schedule. On May 20th, which is our regular schedule meeting, the police department will also be presenting an item in which they bring forth their presentation for the budget study. On May 28th, which is a Tuesday, the Public Works Department will be presenting their department. And then we have an additional study session earmarked for June 3rd if needed. So just wanted to highlight the remaining portion of our schedule. as well as in terms of the process that the end goal will be for us to, again, evaluate the entirety of the enhancement package as proposed, as well as any additional enhancement that the council wants to bring forth. We'll prioritize those and ensure that we yet and still have a balanced budget. Thank you.
And then I just have two quick updates. One, I just wanted to remind council, just because this is going to be at the next council meeting. So on May 20th, we're going to have two presentations from our other governmental partners. So Metro staff will be here to give a presentation and update on Phase 2 of the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor, the light rail. And the LAFD will be here to provide stats, their service stats on 2023. And then I just wanted to mention on our presentations agenda, I think we're going to try something at our next agenda, at our next meeting, and those recurring annual presentations. I think we'll list in a section that says kind of recurring presentations. We'll list them in the agenda, and then we'll also put a copy of the proclamation as an attachment, but we won't necessarily, and we'll keep them on there, and so they'll be identified, but we won't necessarily spend time reading them unless there's a council member wants to pull it and highlight it, or they, someone's here to receive it, just to make sure that we focus our presentations on maybe people that are here or community members that are here to receive them, or they're specifically requested, so that we can still recognize those recurring annual important events and without taking too much time away from the business part of the meeting. So we'll try that for our next agenda and see how that works out. And that is all for staff communication.
Thank you. Up next is council updates. Councilmember Garcia.
I don't have any.
Vice Mayor Mendoza.
I don't have any updates. I just want to say that I appreciate staff's recommendations, and they all, thus far, appear to be very reasonable. Thank you for your time and effort on this.
And I will save my updates for our next regularly scheduled council meeting. I wanted to ask one question about our June 3rd meeting. Right now, it's tentative. And then we would potentially be approving on July 1st because we're not going to have our meeting on the 17th. Could we schedule to approve it on the 3rd? And if we didn't, then of course, approve by the 1st?
I'm sure Erica that's music to Erica's ears.
More than music, more like opera.
I think that way we can plan ahead and ensure that everyone's schedule is clear for the 3rd to answer any additional questions, or we can just finalize it, because then if there are none, then we'd be ready. Yeah, exactly. We could always go to the 1st. Okay, sounds good if everyone's okay with that. Yeah. Thank you, staff, for everything. Erica, I know you put a lot of work into this budget, as well as the rest of the team, and I really appreciate everyone being prepared with the responses and the dialogue that we're already starting. This is clearly going to go very smoothly. All right. Have a good night, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.